Chapter 2894. As soon as he met Chu Li's gaze, Lung Zhifei froze. His initial urge to act stopped. He knew that Chu Li was pretending to be weak on purpose. If he fell for it and thought that it was a good opportunity to hit him when he was down, then it would be terrible. The consequences would be unpredictable, and it would also give the younger generation an ungrateful image. As an emperor, he had to step on all restraints. Morality and emotions must be cast aside. There is only profit and profit. A true emperor would not care about his family. However, he had to conceal his thoughts, otherwise he would be deserted by his friends and family. Chu Li smiled and looked at him. Senior Lung, do you know where these people came from? The Zheng dynasty's celestial beings. Lung Zhifei took a deep breath and said coldly, they want to assassinate King Ping. King Ping knows his soldiers. It's obvious why they want to kill King Ping. Sigh. Lung Shoren said, are they going to attack us? We'll definitely have to use troops. Lung Zhifei nodded slowly. Otherwise, with their strength, they can just assassinate me or you. Attack. Lung Shoren's expression changed. Lung Zhifei glanced at him. Why are you afraid of using troops? A war between two countries is inevitable. As an emperor, you should treat it as a good opportunity to build your career and expand your territory. How can you be afraid? Great ancestor, it's not that I'm afraid, it's just that we have no chance of winning. Lung Shoren shook his head and smiled bitterly. The Zheng dynasty has been silent all these years. Although there have been some small conflicts with the Qiu dynasty, they haven't fought. No matter how the Fu dynasty instigated it, it was useless. It seems like the Zheng dynasty's emperor is a powerful figure. Lung Zhifei nodded. He now understood the situation after his death. The Fu dynasty was the sole power. They used the art of checks and balances to control the four countries. They had been manipulating them to fight endlessly and weaken their strength. As a result, they could not pose a threat to him and could not unite. The Zheng dynasty is full of mystery. Lung Shoren said, it's very scary. It's better not to fight. Moreover, Chu Li has just killed Tang Su, and the Fu dynasty's emperor has just ascended the throne. He should be at his weakest. You want to go against the Fu dynasty? Lung Zhifei frowned. Lung Shoren nodded. This is the best opportunity. Lung Zhifei looked at Chu Li and said, what about Goddess Attraction Mountain? Can you deal with Immortal Attraction Mountain? I don't think Chu Li will intervene in this matter, right? Lung Shoren asked. Chu Li smiled faintly. I'm a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain. I can't disobey my master's orders. I'm afraid I'll have to offend him when the time comes. The world is in chaos, so your majesty should calm down. It's not that easy to take chestnuts out of the fire. If that's the case, then we can only give up. Lung Shoren glared at Chu Li in dissatisfaction. Chu Li said, it's best not to get into a fight. Lung Zhifei said faintly, the Fu dynasty isn't that easy to deal with. You should just give up. Yes. Lung Shoren nodded helplessly. Chu Li said, it's better to stay still and not move. It's better for His Majesty to give up on the idea of sending troops elsewhere. Lung Shoren remained silent. Chu Li shook his head and looked at Lung Zhifei. The ones who came to assassinate your Royal Highness are the Zheng dynasty's celestial beings. Senior Lung should know what the celestial beings are thinking. They have ulterior motives. I wonder if Senior is on the celestial beings' side or the Ji dynasty's side. Of course it's the Ji dynasty, Lung Zhifei said in a low voice. Everything is for the Ji dynasty. Chu Li said with a faint smile, I don't think so. What are you trying to say? Lung Zhifei frowned and looked at him. If you say that I have ulterior motives and want more people to die, it's too ridiculous. It's better not to say it out loud and make people laugh. Chu Li said, it's not appropriate for the Ji dynasty and the Zheng dynasty to send troops now. Lung Zhifei scoffed. If that's the case, you're not going to help? Yes. Chu Li nodded. Lung Zhifei sighed and shook his head. If that's the case, I'll take my leave. Right after he said that, he disappeared without a trace. Lung Shoren followed closely behind. He glanced at King Ping before stepping into the void and disappearing. King Ping's injuries were mostly healed. He was talking with Chu Li in his bedroom. Chu Li sighed. Your Royal Highness, I think the elder ancestor wants to send troops. Yes. King Ping reclined on the bed with a brocade robe in his arms. His face was still pale, and his eyes were dull. He sighed. The elder ancestor has always wanted the Ji dynasty to become stronger. He thinks that it's a good time to act in troubled times. Chu Li said, the situation is unclear now. If we suddenly fall into a war, I'm afraid the Ji dynasty will be surrounded by enemies. It'll be unimaginable. It's better to play it safe. Unfortunately, the elder ancestor wants to take the risk. King Ping sighed. I don't think my brother can dissuade the elder ancestor. Your elder ancestor is a celestial being, Chu Li said. King Ping was stunned and fell into deep thought. Chu Li said, these celestial beings came with a mission. If they can complete it, they'll be rewarded handsomely. It's said that the Outland's reward is very generous, enough to change one's fate. That's why these celestial beings are working so hard. King Ping frowned. The elder ancestor can't be? Even if it's not for the celestial being's mission, there must be some influence in the depths of their hearts. This influence is enough. Chu Li said, that's why your Royal Highness should have a good talk with His Majesty and persuade him not to let your elder ancestor act recklessly. Sigh. King Ping smiled bitterly. My brother can't stop the elder ancestor's decision. Are we just going to mess around with the Ji dynasty? Chu Li frowned. Once the war starts, the ones who will die are innocent civilians. If we really lose, the Fu dynasty might not mediate. They might even take the opportunity to destroy the Ji dynasty. King Ping frowned and pondered. He was not optimistic about the outcome of this war. The Zheng dynasty was definitely stronger than the Ji dynasty. If there were no other strong reinforcements, it would be difficult for the Ji dynasty to win. Although there were ways to win by surprise in the art of war, more often than not, it was a head-on confrontation. Most of the time, the outcome of a war was decided outside of the battlefield. Chu Li said, he's a celestial being now. He might not be that concerned about the Ji dynasty. What he cares about is the Lung clan's interests in the Outland. He won't really care about the interests of this world. All right, I'll persuade my brother. King Ping nodded slowly. He was moved by Chu Li's words. The elder ancestor's celestial being status had determined that he would indeed care more about the Lung clan's interests in the Outland. It would be too unfair if he did not care about the interests of this world. Chu Li sighed in relief and smiled. The celestial beings wanted chaos to come. Chaos would stimulate people's potential and allow them to enter the Grandmaster's boundary faster. Chaos would also cause many battles, and Grandmasters would also fall quickly, thus allowing them to enter the Grandmaster's boundary. This was taking away the foundation of this world to strengthen the Outland. Although it was to deal with the Azura boundary, it did not benefit this world at all. As a person of this world, he naturally did not want to be so selfless and allow the Outland to do whatever it wanted. He bid farewell to King Ping's imperial residence. Lu Yurong did not return to Goddess Attraction Mountain. Instead, she returned to her public house. She missed home after leaving the public house for so long. She wanted to stay in the public house for a while before returning to Goddess Attraction Mountain. When Chu Li saw this, he also brought Xiao Qi and Xiao Shi back to the public house. They had been away from the public house for some time. Pang Shiji, on the other hand, practiced his swordsmanship on Goddess Attraction Mountain. Early in the morning, he was practicing in the courtyard when Xue Ling's white clothes fluttered in, accompanied by a faint fragrance. Chapter 2895. Chu Li's face darkened. A declaration of war? Xue nodded. A declaration of war. I heard that the Tiger Tally has been used. The Emperor will personally lead the army, and King Ping will be the vanguard. Heh, a declaration of war. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. He was disappointed. It seems like King Ping didn't manage to convince Lung Shouren, or rather, Lung Shouren doesn't belong to the Great Ji dynasty. There's really no need for him to serve the Great Ji dynasty. It's better to go to the battlefield. Chu Li sighed and shook his head. I don't mind not being a citizen of the Great Ji dynasty, but I have to be a member of the public house. Xue pursed her lips and nodded without saying a word. She knew how Chu Li felt about the public house. The public house was his root, his home. He could not betray or leave. Chu Li paced with his hands behind his back. He slowly walked out of the courtyard and strolled along the cobblestone path on the island. Unknowingly, the island had undergone a huge change. Everything had changed, but he did not feel it. Now that he was in a complicated mood, he suddenly realized that the island was exquisitely modified by Shui. Shui spent almost all of her time on the island. She would either read the files of Glory's courtyard or find someone to modify the island. Slowly, it became like this. Every blade of grass and every tree showed Shui's painstaking efforts. Xueling blindly followed behind him. The two of them walked around the island and returned to the courtyard. "Master, are you really going to the battlefield?" Shui frowned. Chu Li asked, "What do you think?" Shui shook her head. "I don't think the key is going to the battlefield. It doesn't matter to you, Master." Chu Li was now the world's #1 master. She felt confident. No protector dared to look down on her when she walked in the public house. They were all polite to her. It was the same when she walked on the streets of Chongming town. All of this was thanks to her master. She was proud and felt that no one would be a threat to her master. It did not matter if he went to the battlefield or not. The one who died would be someone else. Chu Li smiled. "Continue. The key is the royal order." Xueling furrowed her brows and said, "Master, you can't obey the emperor's order. Otherwise, there will be a next time. The emperor will definitely be insatiable. If he can't order you alone, he will use the public house to coerce you." Chu Li asked, "Then what should I do? Leave the public house?" Young master will definitely not agree. Xueling gently shook her head and said, "But master, you can look for the emperor. Although the emperor is an enlightened master, he can't defeat master. Just teach him a good lesson. If he dares to mess around, then teach him a good lesson. Let's see if he can withstand the beating." She knew that Chu Li would never leave the public house. Not to mention the influence of his wife, but more importantly, he was someone who cherished old friendships. Every time he came back, he would go to the East Garden to drink and chat with Li Yu. The affairs of the world were both simple and complicated. The complicated part was that people's hearts were complicated and their actions were unpredictable. The simple part was that the strong were respected. Their young master's martial arts were the best in the world. Since that was the case, he had the right to do whatever he wanted, and the emperor couldn't order him around. Chu Li chuckled. Xueling's thoughts coincided with his. She really wanted to teach Long Shoren a lesson. This matter could not be started, otherwise there would be endless trouble. The High Duke's public house was here. Even with the protection of his formation, it was impossible to be flawless. After all, there were many protectors in the High Duke's public house, and there were protectors who went out to work every day. It was easy for outsiders to attack the High Duke's public house, especially the Celestials. They all knew that he valued the High Duke's public house, so they did not dare to simply cause trouble for fear of revenge. However, once they saw that Chu Li accepted the transfer order because of the High Duke's public house, they would be like wolves that smelled blood, using the High Duke's public house to threaten him. If that happened, not only would he be in trouble, but the High Duke's public house would also be in grave danger. Xueling frowned and said, "But this matter is not that easy. If you do not comply with the imperial edict, the High Duke's public house will be punished. Moreover, this matter has already spread to the world. Once the emperor has spoken, it cannot be changed, especially at a time like this. If the young master could refuse the imperial edict and force the emperor to change his order, then the rest of the High Duke's public houses would not be willing to accept it. In this case, the emperor would not allow it. Even if he had to be taught a lesson, he would take it." Chu Li nodded. Xueling sighed and said, "So it seems that there is only one way for you, young master. Even if you beat the emperor up, it will be useless." Chu Li said, "I still have to try." Xueling nodded hard. She hated the emperor and wanted nothing more than for Chu Li to teach him a lesson. The imperial garden of the imperial Housia, bright moon hung in the sky. The moonlight was like a veil, shrouding everything. Everything seemed hazy and beautiful. The imperial garden was brightly lit. Long Shoren and Lung Zhifei were sitting in the gazebo, discussing the deployment of troops. "Elder ancestor, I feel that it is not appropriate to send troops so rashly. Lung Shoren was dressed in a bright yellow robe. Under the light, he looked noble, but his face was solemn and hesitant as he stared at Lung Zhifei. King Ping and Lung Shouqian's words echoed in his ears. He did not want to think about it, but he could not help but think that the elder ancestor was a celestial being after all. He might not really care about the Ji dynasty wholeheartedly. It was better to be cautious. Moreover, King Ping admitted that even if they sent troops, there was no chance of winning. Even if King Ping's military strategy was brilliant, he could not rely on luck because the Zheng dynasty also had a genius in the art of war who was not inferior to him. Lung Shoren was a little hesitant, but he could not dissuade the extremely determined Lung Zhifei. Lung Zhifei stared at him coldly, declining before the battle. You are really useless as an emperor. Elder ancestor, the Zheng dynasty's strength is indeed higher than ours, Lung Shoren said. So what? Lung Zhifei scoffed. We killed many of their celestials last time. The celestials of the Zheng dynasty's imperial family are probably all dead. When the time comes, I will personally deal with the Zheng dynasty's emperor. But Lung Shoren frowned. Although he wanted to object, the elder ancestor's prestige was too high. In the past, he had always been wise and powerful. He was far inferior to him, so he did not have the confidence to refute him. Chapter 2896. Lung Shoren listened to their narration and waved his hand, signaling for them to leave. Everyone quickly left as if they were granted amnesty. They initially thought that they would be severely punished even if they did not die. After all, it was related to the prince's assassination, and every one of them was a major suspect. They would be interrogated repeatedly until the real murderer was found. They did not expect the emperor to let them go so easily. Ding Rue wanted to say something, but stopped when he saw Lung Shoren's gloomy face. He immediately shut his mouth. Lung Shoren waved his hand. Ding Rue nodded lightly and walked to a burly man and whispered a few words to him. Soon, all the imperial guards and protectors of the imperial house left. The huge enclosure became empty except for the sound of the wind blowing through the trees. Lung Shoren stood beside the dense forest without saying a word and looked up at the sky. Ding Rue stood beside him and breathed softly so as not to disturb him. After a while, Ding Rue saw that he was still in a daze and called out softly, Your Majesty? Your Majesty? Yes. Lung Shoren looked up at the sky and said, Ding Rue, do you think I'm a coward as an emperor? Your Majesty, why do you say that? Ding Rue quickly shook his head. Your Majesty is wise and wise. Which minister in the imperial court does not respect you? Sigh, Lung Shoren shook his head and said, I am indeed a coward as an emperor. Ding Rue advised, Your Majesty, although the prince is dead, he did not reincarnate, nor did his soul dissipate. He has only gone to the outland. You can still see him. There is no need to be sad. Hee, Lung Shoren laughed and sighed. As an emperor, I can't even protect my own son. What is the point of being an emperor? You should go back first. I want to walk alone. Your Majesty, please do not hurt my body. Ding Rue bowed and retreated. Lung Shoren flashed and disappeared from the side of the forest. The next moment, he appeared in a forest outside of Chongming Town. He originally wanted to teleport to the public house, but realized that there was an invisible force blocking his senses, and he could not teleport directly. This was obviously Chu Li's doing, and he did not know what treasured weapon he used. Ordinary formations were unable to be used against enlightened masters. Formations that could block enlightened masters were almost extinct. Beyond Heaven did not allow such formations to exist in order to establish the supreme prestige of enlightened masters. He arrived at the outskirts of Chongming Town and looked at it from afar. He could feel the prosperity of Chongming Town. He shook his head. This little-known Chongming Town actually had the shadow of the fairy's capital. With a few strides, he passed through Chongming Town and arrived outside the High Duke's public house. Then, without the protectors noticing, he glided into the public house. Just as he was about to look for Chu Li's courtyard, he suddenly turned around and saw Chu Li standing not far away, quietly watching him. He gave a fist salute. Chu Li, I would like to have a chat with you. Your Majesty, please. Chu Li nodded and glided away. The two of them walked on the waves and arrived at his small island. Initially, he was not in the public house. He was at Goddess Attraction Mountain, but when he sensed the fluctuation of the formation in the public house, he immediately rushed back and saw Longshoren. The two of them arrived at a gazebo on the island and sat down. Xueling's white dress fluttered like snow as she approached them and curtsied. Young master, brew some tea, Chu Li said. Xueling nodded and bowed at Longshoren before leaving. Longshoren nodded and looked at Chu Li. I'm here to make a deal with you. Chu Li said, Your Majesty, please speak your mind. His feelings toward Emperor Longshoren were rather complicated. If it was Lung Wufeng, he would have killed him long ago. Even if Lung Wufeng was not the Ji dynasty's emperor, he could not kill Longshoren as he was unable to do so. The key was his weakness of being soft-hearted. As an emperor, soft-hearted was indeed a fatal weakness, but to others, it was an advantage. It showed that he still had humanity. He was not just an emperor, an enlightened master, or a normal person. When Longshoren used Shao Qi as a threat, Chu Li immediately killed him. However, he could swear because of Lung Zhifei. Chu Li restrained his killing intent, so he could live for a while longer. He decided to kill Longshoren the next time he angered him. Longshoren said, I want to abdicate and ascend to heaven. I want Suen to succeed me. Chu Li smiled. Your Majesty, why are you in such a hurry to ascend? I've had enough of this position. Longshoren laughed self-deprecatingly. Before I got the throne, I tried to seize it at all costs. However, now that I'm in this position, I realize that it's not as good as I imagined. It's not as free as I thought it would be. Instead, it's more painful and uncomfortable. I should have been a prince back then. Chu Li said, Abdicate because of this? You must be joking, Your Majesty. If someone else said this, he would not believe it. However, when Longshoren said it, he somewhat believed it. This was because Longshoren was strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. Although he looked solemn and cold on the outside, he was actually weak on the inside. Under extreme circumstances, he would reveal his true colors. Feng Er is dead. Longshoren laughed bitterly. As an emperor, I can't protect my own son. Isn't that ridiculous? How can I still be an emperor? Chu Li said, Your Majesty, why do you have to be so stubborn? Even the previous emperor couldn't protect King and back then. Longshoren shook his head. He's my only son. Now that he was an enlightened master, his concubines could not have martial arts. Otherwise, they would not be able to withstand his body. However, there were repercussions from the initiation. Even if they could be husband and wife, they could not have children. Chu Li nodded slowly. Because the prince has ascended, Your Majesty has to follow and take care of him? Yes. Longshoren nodded slowly. Chu Li, haven't you been trying hard to push for Su and to succeed the throne? I promise you that Su and will succeed the throne. What about the crown prince? Chu Li asked. He can't succeed the throne. Longshoren said in a low voice. I will never allow him to succeed the throne. Chu Li shook his head. Since he's the crown prince, he naturally has to succeed the throne. Otherwise, what would the world think? What would King Ping do? It seems like you have a close relationship with the crown prince. You're actually willing to give in to him in front of the throne. Longshoren said, It's hard to tell what's in a man's heart. Aren't you afraid that he'll turn against you after he becomes the emperor? Chu Li shook his head. If he was a grand master, he would naturally be afraid. However, as an enlightened master, he believed that King Ping would not act recklessly. More importantly, he had already pushed for King Ping to be the crown prince. If Suen suddenly became the emperor, what would King Ping think? Even if Suen became the emperor, he would still need to rely on King Ping to lead the army. No matter how smart Suen was, he would not be able to lead the army. The Ji dynasty had no divine generals except for King Ping. If Suen could not use King Ping, it would be troublesome for him to be the emperor. It would be better to not do so. As for whether King Ping would be wary of Suen after he became the emperor, it did not matter. If you want him to succeed the throne, you have to promise me something? Longshoren scoffed. Otherwise, I'd rather pass the throne to ninth brother. Tell me, Chu Li said. Kill Lung Zhifei. Lung Shoren said. So it's the prince that Lung Zhifei killed. Chu Li came to a sudden realization. He looked at Lung Shoren with pity and sighed. Is this the emperor's family? He dispelled the thought that this was a trap set by Lung Shoren and Lung Zhifei. If you kill him, I'll pass the throne to King Ping. Lung Shoren said. All right, I agree, Chu Li said. In a flash, he disappeared on the spot. The next moment, he appeared in King Ping's imperial residence, which was also the crown prince's imperial residence. He took King Ping with him and appeared on his own island. The next moment, he disappeared again. Chapter 2897. Why is the emperor here? King Ping was surprised and closed fist saluted. He looked around, but Chu Li had already disappeared. He did not recognize this place. He glided to the pagoda and looked around. He immediately saw the vast lake and understood that this was the public house. Lung Shoren did not expect Chu Li to bring King Ping here immediately. He frowned and said, Fourth brother, I've discussed with Chu Li to pass the throne to you. The emperor discussed with Chu Li? King Ping was shocked. As far as he knew, the two were enemies. Why would they discuss the throne together? Lung Shoren said, I wanted to pass the throne to Suen, but Chu Li asked you to inherit the throne. King Ping frowned. Lung Shoren said, Then I'll give it to you. I'm going to abdicate the throne anyway. What is the emperor doing? King Ping was confused. He felt that the Lung Shoren in front of him was fake. His tone was different and his actions were strange. Lung Shoren scoffed and said, You'll know after this. Just tell me if you want the throne or not. No. King Ping shook his head. Lung Shoren sneered and shook his head. There are only the two of us here. There are no outsiders. While I, fourth brother, I really don't want to be the emperor. King Ping said, I'm not being polite. Just by looking at you, I know that being the emperor is not interesting. It's more comfortable to be my King Xiaoyao. If it wasn't for Chu Li's kindness, I wouldn't want to be the crown prince. Then you don't want the throne? Lung Shoren frowned. I've already promised Chu Li to pass the throne to you. Pass it to Suen. King Ping said. Lung Shoren stared at him. He could not understand King Ping's thoughts. He wanted to abdicate the throne because he was tired of everything. There was also the sadness of having no successor after his son died. He only had this thought after he became the emperor. Before he became the emperor, he could not resist the temptation of the throne. However, King Ping had never tasted the feeling of supremacy. He must have wanted to, but he refused. It was unreasonable. King Ping said, Passing the throne to Suen now is the best for the Ji dynasty and the Lung clan. I admire fourth brother now. Lung Shoren said slowly. There's nothing to admire. I've already seen through everything after the death of the princess. It doesn't matter, King Ping said calmly. Lung Shoren looked at him and nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand King Ping now. The two brothers were both soft-hearted and affectionate people. However, King Ping was affectionate towards his concubine, while King Ping was soft-hearted towards his son. They were both affected by their emotions and were indeed unsuitable to be the emperor. If that's the case, then let's pass it to Suen. He has the blood of third brother and is also the Arhut, Lung Shoren said. Just as the two of them were talking, Chu Li suddenly appeared. His entire body was surging with a terrifying aura, like a huge wave. However, his face was calm as usual. He smiled at Lung Shoren. Fortunately, I did not fail you. Lung Zhifei has ascended to heaven. Ancestor? King Ping was surprised. Chu Li smiled and said, It seems that the crown prince still does not know that Lung Feng was indeed killed by Lung Zhifei. I have already asked him clearly before I killed him. What a wise and powerful ruler to kill without batting an eye, even to his own descendant. As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. He did not expect things to turn out this way. The throne that he had been pursuing was actually right in front of him. He had planned so many things in advance, but they were all useless. Zhuo Feiyang and the others had worked for nothing. However, Suen had given up on it. Even if he was an enlightened master, no matter how capable he was, he could not change Suen's mind. Ancestor killed Feng heir? King Ping frowned. Why? Because ancestor did not want Feng heir to inherit the throne. Lung Shoren laughed coldly. He was more in love with you, fourth brother. In the end, it was just as he expected. Perhaps all of this was within ancestor's calculations. After ancestor killed Feng heir, even if he was killed, he still wanted to pass the throne to fourth brother. This could very well be part of ancestor's plan. Chu Li calmly replied, this wasn't part of his plan. He still wants to kill you, the emperor, so that King Ping can directly inherit the throne. After all, he's the crown prince. He admires you for coming to me in advance and acting before he does. He's quite pleased with you for this. Sai, why bother? King Ping shook his head and smiled bitterly. Chu Li, I will not be the emperor. Sun is more suitable. Chu Li shook his head. Don't misunderstand, Your Highness. I'm not being polite. The cultivation method that Sun chose is to stay out of the world. Inheriting the throne will delay his cultivation. Compared to becoming an emperor, he wants to become a Buddha more. King Ping frowned. He has only been an emperor for 60 years. It won't hinder his cultivation, right? Chu Li sighed. I will try to persuade him again. He suddenly disappeared and appeared at the Symphony Island of the High Duke's public house. Xiaoshi was dressed in a loose white robe. She quietly sat cross-legged on the couch and cultivated. When she sensed his appearance, she opened her eyes. Her eyes shone brightly, and it was as if the room was suddenly lit up. Chu Li said, Go and see Sun and persuade him. Persuade him to become the emperor? Xiaoshi frowned. Chu Li nodded. Now, there's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. The throne is within his grasp. All right, I have not seen him for a while. Xiaoshi nodded. Chu Li grabbed her wrist and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared outside the Titanium Temple. The Titanium Temple was still bathed in golden light. To others, it was just a shabby small temple. It was quiet and peaceful. Time seemed to have stopped in this small temple. The vicissitudes of time could be seen on the courtyard walls, but there was no feeling of time passing. There was only tranquility. As soon as he and Xiaoshi appeared, the courtyard door opened. Sun slowly walked out in a gray robe. He came to the two of them and bowed with pressed palms. Chief Chu and Xiao. Xiaoshi looked at him and pursed her lips into a smile. You've grown taller. I need to make 2 new sets of robes. When Chu Li saw him come out, he knew that there were monks in the temple who predicted his arrival. This was not inferior to his heavenly star insight skill. It was probably a divine power, similar to the heaven's eye. Divine powers were indeed unique. Sun lowered his head to look at himself and nodded embarrassedly. I heard that you don't want to be the emperor anymore. Xiaoshi scoffed. Sun shook his head. I am cultivating the separation technique. I am in a good state. It is not suitable for me to be an emperor and be lost in the secular world. Whether you're lost or not doesn't depend on whether you are an emperor or not. It depends on your state of mind. Xiaoshi said impatiently. Being an emperor can train your state of mind. It will strengthen your state of mind. If being an emperor hinders your cultivation, then your cultivation will not be stable. It will be hard for you to reach perfection. Sun said, Master's granduncle once told me that if I become an emperor, I will definitely die. It will delay a lifetime. Xiaoshi frowned. Which master's granduncle? Master's granduncle Tianji. Sun shook his head and said, Marshal Granduncle Tianji's Heaven's Eye connection has already reached great success. There is no escape for him in the world. Before he became a Buddha, he told me this. That's why I cultivated the method of transcendence, not wanting to delay this life. The 10 lifetimes Buddha ascension technique required a lifetime of cultivation. He was still young. If he died so soon, he would delay a lifetime. In the future, his Buddha rank would drop by 1 level. Compared to this, the throne was insignificant. After all, he was just a passerby of the throne. If that's the case, Xiaoshi nodded. That's fine. Cultivate well. Don't worry about anything else. Sun nodded. Aunt Xiao, the imperial residence has its own fate. There's no need to force it. All right, I know. Go back and cultivate. Xiaoshi patted his shoulder. Sun bowed with pressed palms at Chu Li. He turned around and slowly walked into the courtyard. Chapter 2898. Chu Li smiled. Feeling that Suthan has grown up? Yes, the little monk has grown up too. Seo sure nodded. Chu Li said, he couldn't bear it. That's why he left so quickly. Let's go. Seo sure rolled her eyes and scoffed. I know what he's thinking. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. He grabbed her wrist and returned to Symphony Island. Lung Shoren and Lung Shoqian were both there. Chu Li Fist saluted and sat down in the gazebo. Your Majesty, Your Highness, Suan won't take over the throne. He wants to become a Buddha. The throne is insignificant to him. He prefers the life in the Titanium Temple. Forget it, let him be. Such a strong Buddha nature. Lung Shoren sighed. Fine, if that's the case, we won't force him. Let's pass the throne to fourth brother. However, fourth brother is in a rush to take over the throne. It's best if he can accept it. Chu Li smiled. Not bad. Sit down and talk. I'll just stand. Li Meng said. Your master has something important to tell me? Chu Li did not force her and went straight to the point. Master Chu, he asked me to tell you not to go to the Great Light Peak. Because a great master came to the Great Light Peak. Li Meng curled her lips and snorted. This great grandmaster has ordered from master to sever all ties with you. Marshal Uncle Chu. Master is not allowed to contact you anymore. A deva? Chu Li asked. Li Meng nodded slowly. Chu Li frowned. He stood up and paced with his hands behind his back. Li Mengwu's big round eyes stared at his figure, following his movements and turning her eyes. He's not here with good intentions. This great master wants your master to kill me, right? Chu Li asked. Li Meng hesitated and nodded. Chu Li said, your master strongly disagreed. However, your great master was too aggressive and took out the sex order. Your master had no choice but to take a step back and stop contacting me. Am I right? Li Meng nodded. She could not help but secretly praise Master Chu Li. You're really smart. This Dong Guangyi is a god's favored one. He's extraordinarily lucky. You must be careful. Not inferior to me? Chu Li asked. Li Meng nodded. Chu Li said thoughtfully, Dong Guangyi. He had never heard of this person before. When he was a commander of the Secret Guardians Hall, he had a deep understanding of the Zheng dynasty. There was no master named Dong Guangyi in Black Tortoise Mountain, which meant that Dong Guangyi had suddenly risen to power. He must have had a fortuitous encounter or cultivated hard for decades to amaze the world. According to Master, Dong Guangyi has the shadow of a celestial being behind him. Li Meng said, his martial arts are exquisite and his cultivation is profound. I'm afraid he will become a formidable opponent for you, Uncle Master Chu. You must not be careless. Chu Li smiled and nodded. All right. Li Meng clapped her hands and hurriedly said, I almost forgot to mention that this Dong Guangyi is also very young. He's about the same age as you, Marshal Uncle Chu. Chu Li smiled. This is interesting, Li Meng said. In any case, Master has solemnly warned us to be careful of this person. Don't fail miserably and ruin our reputation. Chu Li smiled and nodded. The title of the world's #1 expert had always been a joke. Who would dare to claim to be the world's #1 expert? He had never thought of himself as such. Li Meng hesitated for a moment before she whispered, Master also told you not to meddle in the affairs between the Ji dynasty and the Zheng dynasty. Chu Li was stunned. Li Meng nodded. That's what Master said, and she didn't look too good. She didn't look good. Chu Li pondered. Sun Mingwei should know his temperament. He would never stand by and watch innocent people suffer in wars. He would definitely prevent wars from happening. However, she warned him not to meddle. There must be an inside story, but she could not say it clearly. Chu Li had to speculate. Sun Mingwei must have told him not to meddle for his own good. If that was the case, it would be dangerous for him to meddle. It meant that the Zheng dynasty and the Li dynasty were very powerful together, and he was no match for them. It seemed that Dong Guangyi was indeed a formidable opponent, and he had a powerful celestial being. Anything else? Chu Li asked gently. Li Meng shook her head. No, that's all. All right, I understand. Chu Li smiled. Tell your master not to worry. I know what I'm doing. Master advises you not to mess around. We can't stop a war between nations, Li Meng quickly said. Chu Li smiled. Li Meng looked at his smile and knew that he did not listen to her. She became anxious. Master can't be wrong. Master's Uncle Chu. Please listen to Master for once. Chu Li said, I'll try my best. Chapter 2899. As he was talking to Li Meng, Xue's white robe fluttered over, bringing with it a faint fragrance. She whispered, Master, I've received news that the Zheng dynasty has declared war on the Ji dynasty. I heard that the border has begun to gather troops. Chu Li stood up immediately. Xue said, the Ji dynasty has just retracted their declaration of war, and the Zheng dynasty has declared war. Master, this time, she shook her head gently. Chu Li took a deep breath and sneered. These celestial beings can't wait. He guessed that the celestial beings had received the news of Lung Zhifei's death and knew that they could not fight, so they took the initiative to declare war. Xue whispered, Master, the Zheng dynasty might have their own reasons. The Zheng dynasty has been quietly developing for the past few years. The Fu dynasty originally wanted to restrain them, but they encountered you and suffered many setbacks. They had no time to restrain the Zheng dynasty. Now that the Zheng dynasty has grown, the Fu dynasty's emperor is weak, they will definitely not let go of this opportunity to rise. Chu Li glanced at Xue. He did not expect her to grow to this stage. She was indeed very talented. Li Meng quickly said, Master's Junior Chu, don't forget what Master said. Chu Li looked at Li Meng and smiled. Do you want me to sit here and wait for the Zheng dynasty's army to attack? He had just pacified the Ji dynasty. His original plan was to go to the Zheng dynasty's imperial family to pacify this side and the other side. It was impossible to stop the war by suppressing one side. He did not expect the Zheng dynasty to declare war one step ahead. Li Meng said, Master's Junior Chu, you can't stop the Zheng dynasty. How will you know if you don't try? Chu Li said. He turned around and asked, Xue, do you have a longevity grass? Yes, I found 3. Xue nodded. They're planted in the courtyard. Chu Li smiled in satisfaction. 3 is enough. Give it to me. Yes. Xue replied and fluttered away. Master's Junior Chu, are you going to the Zheng dynasty? Li Meng asked helplessly. Chu Li smiled as a tacit agreement. Sigh. Li Meng felt useless as she could not persuade Chu Li. It would be great if Master Zheng was here. Unfortunately, Master Zheng did not dare to come. Master Zheng was too fierce and watched too closely. Chu Li smiled. Why are you sighing at such a young age? Go back quickly and don't let Master Zheng find you. I'll be careful. All right. Meng could only get up and left. She cursed. She wanted to tell Master as soon. By the time Chu Li stood in the Zheng dynasty's capital, Saint's Peace City, it was already 2 days later. It was the first time he came to St. Peace City, so he couldn't teleport here directly. He had to use his Qin Gong according to the map. Shang'an City was like a giant beast entrenched under a towering, snow-capped peak. One could only see the snow halfway up the snow-capped peak, but not the upper half hidden in the clouds. Compared to the towering snow-capped mountain, the huge Shang'an City didn't seem that huge. Chu Li stood in front of Saint's Peace City and felt a chill. It was not the cold wind that blew from the snowy mountains, but a chill that came from his bones. It was an inexplicable sense of danger. His instinct told him to leave this place and not enter. Chu Li's omniscient mirror spread out and enveloped Saint's Peace City, allowing him to see the entire city. Saint's Peace City was built in an ancient style, similar to that of the Great Li Dynasty. However, compared to the Great Li Dynasty, it was less exquisite and more fierce. One could tell at a glance that the people in the city were tough and good at fighting. They were all natural warriors. Chu Li frowned slightly. This was the same as the information from the Secret Guardian's Hall. However, after seeing it with his own eyes, he realized that the information was not exaggerated enough. Instead, it was understated. The Zheng dynasty's imperial court was definitely very aggressive with such a courageous people. To be able to hide their strength and bide their time for so long, it was obvious that they had big plans. It seemed like the Zheng dynasty's war this time was not purely instigated by the Celestials, but the Zheng dynasty itself. It seemed like they had to kill the emperor. With a murderous intent, He used the omniscient mirror to envelop the Zheng dynasty's imperial palace. However, as soon as the omniscient mirror shone, the Zheng dynasty's imperial palace suddenly flashed with a green light. Then, the imperial palace disappeared from the omniscient mirror, as if it didn't exist. It was extremely strange. Chu Li frowned. The imperial palace was obviously protected by a treasure that could isolate it from prying eyes. It was even better than the Ji dynasty. He couldn't find out the truth, but he felt a sense of dread toward the imperial palace. After thinking about it, he roared at the sky, his voice rolling like thunder. Where is the Zheng dynasty's emperor? Chu Li is here. Since he knew that there was danger, he would not force his way in. He was not arrogant enough to think that he was invincible. His intuition would not lie. Chu Li is here. Where is the Zheng dynasty's emperor? Zheng Donglai. Chu Li shouted in a deep voice. His shout was like a thunderclap that shook the entire Saints' Peace City. The snowy peaks in the distance seemed to start sliding down ice and snow. He gathered the enlightened master's power in his shout. Its power was amazing. If a grandmaster came close, he would be shocked to death. Chu Li, how dare you? Amidst the roar, a yellow figure appeared in the sky. His bright yellow robe shone with golden light under the sun. The Zheng dynasty's emperor, Zheng Donglai, was a tall and burly middle-aged man. He had a protruding nose and a square mouth. His forehead was full and wide, and his eyes were merciless and cold. He looked at Chu Li eerily, making people shudder. Chu Li looked up and smiled at Zheng Donglai. Your Majesty must have many masters lying in ambush in the imperial palace, right? That's right. I admire you for daring to come here. Unfortunately, this is a dead end. Zheng Donglai stood in the void with his hands behind his back. He shook his head proudly. Since you're here, don't even think about going back. As soon as he finished speaking, silhouettes suddenly appeared in the void around him. 12 silhouettes surrounded Chu Li. Chu Li's expression changed slightly. His omniscient mirror saw Sun Mingyue behind him. Sun Mingyue was covered with a white veil. Her clothes were as white as snow, revealing only a pair of bright eyes. Beside her was a woman dressed similarly. Her clothes were also as white as snow. Her face was covered with a white veil, revealing only a pair of clear eyes. However, Chu Li could recognize her at a glance. Sun Mingyue's almond-shaped eyes revealed a complicated expression, but she remained silent. Chu Li quickly regained his composure. He glanced at the 12 people around him, and his gaze stopped on a young man. This young man was burly, but not tall. His appearance was not too handsome either. He was only slightly better than the average person. He looked like a straightforward young man. He was not scheming and was outspoken. With a glance, he could clearly see who was a celestial and who was an enlightened master. As for grandmasters, they were not qualified to stand in front of him. 8 second-rank celestials and 4 enlightened masters. I'm really shocked. Chu Li withdrew his gaze and looked at Zheng Donglai. He said indifferently, "You want to put me to death just like that?" Among the 4 enlightened masters, one was Sun Mingyue, another was the emperor of the Li dynasty, and another was Zheng Donglai. The last one was the young man. He must be the Zheng dynasty's new enlightened master, Dong Guangyi, whom Li Meng had mentioned. His cultivation level was indeed profound. At first glance, he seemed to be on par with him. This was a little shocking. He had all kinds of fortuitous encounters and his own talent to achieve such achievements. How did Dong Guangyi achieve this? He did not look like a very smart person. Could his luck be better than his? What was even stranger was where did so many rank 2 celestials come from? As far as he knew, rank 2 celestials were all-important people. It was not easy to gather 8 of them. This showed how capable Zheng Donglai was. If you can escape, then you'll be the world's #1 master, Zheng Donglai said in a low voice. Chapter 2900. Dong Guangyi's body regained its mobility, but he still had a lingering fear. If he had not teamed up with Zheng Donglai, he would have been killed by Chu Li. It was a close call. He did not expect Chu Li to be so difficult to deal with. If he was at his peak, he would not have been a match for Chu Li. He had too many tricks up his sleeves. He immediately put away his inner arrogance and devoted himself to fighting the enemy. He was proud when he saw that his cultivation level was similar to Chu Li's. Moreover, Chu Li was hit by the God-forbidding seal, so it was a piece of cake to take him down. Without the help of spiritual energy from the Outland, the surrounding spiritual energy was like replacing a treasure knife with a wooden knife. The power was incomparable. As long as the enlightened master's energy in Chu Li's body was depleted, he would not be able to resist and would definitely die. With this thought in mind, it was inevitable that he was careless and almost killed by Chu Li. After he nodded and thanked Zheng Donglai, the treasure knife became unusually bright. It was dazzling and cold. He was no longer greedy and wanted to be stable. This was the true essence of his black tortoise power. Once it slowed down, its power would increase tremendously. As he slowly swung his blade downwards, the energy of the blade swept across the land. The blade was full and smooth, and it was invulnerable. Chu Li glanced at it and took a step back to avoid the sharp edge. Sun Mingwei did not move, but Sun Faxing took a step forward and punched. Bam! Chu Li took his fist energy head-on. Sun Faxing's fist energy was strange. One palm energy contained several forces that intertwined with each other and were not consistent. It was like several snakes intertwining together, tearing at the defense at the same time. Its power was amazing. It was harder to deal with than the knife-like palm energy. The supreme, indestructible body of Vajra was as solid as a rock. No matter how strange the force was, it was always repelled. It blocked the punch and pushed Sun Faxing back. Sun Faxing frowned. He did not expect Chu Li to be so difficult to deal with. He continued to punch. Zheng Donglai punched, and Dongguang overflowed with knives. The three of them attacked together to exhaust Chu Li's inner energy. They believed that once Chu Li's inner energy was exhausted, he would no longer have the enlightened master's energy and could not absorb spiritual energy from the Outland. Sun Mingwei stood at the side and did not move. Jing Miaoyun, who was already dim and weak, asked, "Mingwei, why aren't you moving?" "Grandmaster." Sun Mingwei gently shook her head. "Forget it. I'm not needed. A long night is fraught with dreams." Jing Miaoyun's crisp voice was filled with coldness. "What time is it now? Still talking about women's benevolence? Since you've already started, don't look back. Follow this path to the end." "Yes." Sun Mingwei sighed and was about to strike. Just as she was about to make a move, her expression suddenly changed. She pulled Jing Miaoyun and retreated a few dozen feet away. Chu Li pulled out the heaven-killing sword and slowly slashed the necks of the remaining 7 devis. Jing Miaoyun barely managed to dodge the 7 level stones. The other 3 enlightened masters did not manage to save him in time and could only watch helplessly as Chu Li easily killed the celestial being. The price of using the God Restraining Seal was extremely high. His cultivation level would be completely depleted. Initially, he wanted to stay and see how Chu Li would die. After all, Chu Li had also jumped. Not long after, watching him die was the best thing to do. Unfortunately, they had only calculated that Chu Li was like a toothless tiger. They did not expect Chu Li to be able to use the Sky Regicide Sword. Even in their peak states, it was difficult for them to evade, let alone in their weakened state. None of the 7 could escape the fate of Owl. They all turned into streams of light and charged toward the slowly opening divine gate. Chu Li, Zheng Donglai was furious. Chu Li sheathed his sword and smiled at Jing Miaoyun before turning to look at Zheng Donglai. Zheng Donglai's body had already swelled up like an inflated balloon. Dongguang did the same. A black tortoise slowly appeared in the sky and landed on his body. It was as if the black tortoise had possessed his body. Sun Faxing's body did not move, but his aura continued to rise. It was as if he had turned from a small mountain into a towering mountain. It was obvious that he had not used his full strength before. "Kill him," Zheng Donglai shouted. Chu Li frowned. Jing Miaoyun turned into a stream of light and shot toward him. It was too late to dodge. Bang! Jing Miaoyun suddenly turned into a ball of light and exploded. Then a beam of light shot into the sky. Chu Li only felt as if he had fallen into a raging flame. The energy of extreme yang eroded him. It was tyrannical and overbearing. The God-restraining seal, which was already loosening and about to collapse, suddenly solidified. It was 2 times stronger than before. As a result, he could not break free for a while. A cold light flashed in Chu Li's eyes. He did not expect that his kindness of sparing her would lead to such an end. Jing Miaoyun was so unyielding that she immediately self-destructed and turned into the Great Light Flame. She used the secret technique of Great Light. It was truly ruthless. He can't hold on anymore. Zheng Donglai saw that Chu Li's originally rising aura was declining again. He was overjoyed. Leader's son, don't let Senior Jing's sacrifice be in vain. Sun Minghua sighed. She did not expect Master to want to kill Chu Li so much. Bang, 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 bang. Dong Guangyi rushed over. He did not use his blade and used his fists as weapons to hit Chu Li. Chu Li faced him head-on. He channeled the true supreme titanium supreme scripture and the supreme indestructible titanium body at the same time. Their fists collided and met force with force. For a moment, it was hard to tell who was superior. Dong Guangyi's skin became extremely thick and his strength increased. It was as if he was a completely different person from before. Zheng Donglai's palm force was like a treasure blade. It was several times sharper and could already faintly pierce his palm and break through the supreme, indestructible titanium body's defense. The power of Sun Faxing's fists had also increased by several times. Sun Minghua hesitated for a moment before she threw a light punch. Bang! Chu Li took her punch head-on and took 2 steps back. The power of the divine light fist was amazing. Zheng Donglai was overjoyed and laughed. Chu Li, you will definitely die today. Chu Li drew his sword out of its sheath. Suddenly, the surrounding space was locked. He stabbed his sword at Zheng Donglai. As long as he killed Zheng Donglai, the Zheng dynasty could retreat. Bang! The tip of the sword was blocked by a palm-sized shield. Chu Li felt a strong recoil from the tip of the sword. The inner energy of the true, supreme, titanium supreme scripture was almost exhausted. The supreme, indestructible titanium body's power began to decline and could not hold on for long. Chu Li's expression did not change, but he secretly frowned. This was troublesome. If the inner energy of the true, supreme, titanium supreme scripture was insufficient, he would not be able to break through the God-forbidding seal. The Sky Killer Sword alone might not be able to kill these people. What was worse was that the Sky Killer Sword could be blocked. Dong Guangyi held the palm-sized shield in his hand. After blocking the attack, he staggered a few steps back. His face was red, and he almost vomited blood, but there was a smile on his face. The black tortoise shield could actually block the Sky Killer Sword. Although the power of the Sky Killer Sword was amazing and almost injured him, it could be blocked. This was the most important thing. Chu Li's expression changed slightly. This sword consumed 300 years of his life. The sword that killed the 7 celestial beings consumed 500 years, so 800 years of his life. He did not believe it and attacked again. 500 years of his life was stabbed again. If this sword did not succeed, he would no longer be able to use the Sky Killer Sword. His life was limited. Ding! The black tortoise shield blocked the sword again. Bang! Dong Guangyi crashed into a tree. Suddenly, the tree trembled. In the blink of an eye, the leaves withered and died. Dong Guangyi's mouth was bleeding, but he was smiling. The other 3 enlightened masters attacked Chu Li. Bang! After Chu Li was hit by Sun Faxing, the supreme, indestructible titanium body was finally broken. The inner energy of the true supreme, titanium supreme scripture was already depleted and could not continue. He vomited blood and staggered backward, leaning against a tree. Chapter 2901. Bam, 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 bam. Continuous punches and palms were thrown at Chu Li. They had all activated their secret arts and unleashed their mystical techniques. If he had the supreme, Vajra invincible body, he could still block them. However, he couldn't use the supreme, Vajra invincible body. He could clearly feel how astonishing the power of every punch and palm was. He pressed his hand on the imperial sword and activated the heaven-killing technique to protect his body. He continued to attack them without fear of death. His lifespan was constantly decreasing. If this continued, his life would be over. Chu Li anxiously thought of a solution and found that the surrounding void was no longer sealed. It was obviously the work of the 8 great celestial beings. Zheng Donglai and the others were careless. He could escape at any time, but he was unwilling to escape like this. He could not kill Zheng Donglai, so he could not force the Zheng dynasty to retreat. Bam! Dong Guangyi suddenly shrank his body and turned into a shadow that crashed toward Chu Li. Chu Li met it with his palm. Bam! Dong Guangyi's shadow passed through Chu Li's palm and appeared behind him. He slapped Chu Li's back. Chu Li staggered forward and felt a sharp pain in his back. Dong Guangyi disappeared in a flash and avoided Chu Li's retaliatory palm energy. Chu Li's omniscient mirror had already seen a short dagger stuck in his back. It was as black as ink and emitted a cold aura like the taste of death. The cold aura was constantly eroding his body and surging to every part of his body. Wherever the cold aura passed, vitality disappeared and flesh deteriorated. I obtained this underworld dagger by accident. I never had the chance to use it. Dong Guangyi stood 100 feet away and shouted, "Chu Li, have a taste." Chu Li reached out his hand to pull it out, but he felt a sharp pain and could not pull it out. Countless tiny tendrils grew out of the dagger. They were thin but tough, and they drilled into his flesh like tree roots in the soil. Bam, 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 bam. Zheng Donglai, Sun Faxing, and Sun Mingyue kept attacking. Their fists and palms were endless. He pressed his hand on the Imperial Sky Sword to block and began to withdraw the true supreme titanium scripture. He actually gave up on breaking through the God-forbidding seal. However, he could not care less now. The underworld dagger was his biggest problem. He began to circulate the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. "I'll lend you a hand." Sun Mingyue's voice rang out in his mind. She regretted not lending Chu Li a hand earlier. With her own supreme diamond scripture, Chu Li might have already broken through the God-forbidding seal if the two of them worked together. He would not have fallen to such a state. "Don't move." Chu Li's voice rang in her head. Sun Mingyue snorted in his mind. "Look at the situation now. Why are you still trying to show off?" Chu Li replied, "I have my own plans." The two of them exchanged blows without the slightest bit of mercy. Bystanders could not see any flaws, much less tell that they were communicating. The Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture began to circulate. Immediately, the underworld dagger's cold current flowed even faster. Then it went against the strange power in his body, the power of the God-forbidding seal. The two forces collided and immediately attacked each other. Underworld dagger's power kept pouring in, rushing towards the God-forbidding seal. The power of the God-restraining seal was strange, but it countered the power of the underworld dagger. Both of them attacked each other as if they had met their mortal enemy. Chu Li let out a sigh of relief. Bam, 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 bam. He was still being attacked by the 4 enlightened masters, but he did not budge. He was as hard as a rock. Dong Guangyi frowned. He did not expect Chu Li to not die after being hit by the underworld dagger. His vitality was so strong. No wonder he could run amok until now. All the more reason to kill him. If he did not die, Dong Guangyi would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. A small red bead slipped out of his sleeve. It was the size of a red bean and was very inconspicuous. He threw the bead silently at Chu Li's back. It was a sneak attack while Chu Li and the other 3 were fighting. Chu Li moved and barely dodged the bead. Bam! The bead exploded and turned into water droplets that scattered. Chu Li did not manage to dodge it completely. 2 drops splashed on the back of his hand. Suddenly, intense pain came from the back of his hand. 2 small holes appeared on the back of his hand. The bloody holes were gone, and white bones with red smoke could be seen. It was as if the white bones were turning pink. What is this? Chu Li gritted his teeth and ignored the pain. Dong Guangyi smiled. This is the sun's real liquid. How powerful is it? Where did it come from? Chu Li asked in a low voice. He realized that the red energy was still drilling into his body as if it would melt his bones. Thus, he activated the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture to transform it. Unfortunately, the sun's real liquid was strange and could not be transformed. Dong Guangyi said, "I got it by chance." Chu Li knew it was another fortuitous encounter. This guy had more fortuitous encounters than himself. Dong Guangyi was even more afraid. At this time, they could not take Chu Li down even after activating their secret skill for so long. Was there really no way to deal with him? Any weapon that they thought was fatal could not kill him. Chu Li sighed. "You guys are too impatient." As Zheng Donglai approached, he suddenly reached behind him and pulled out the underworld dagger, stabbing it into Zheng Donglai's palm. Zheng Donglai grunted, and his expression changed. He sensed that something was wrong. The cold air entered his palm and quickly traveled up his arm to his heart. He tried to pull it out, but he couldn't. The underworld dagger had already pierced out, its long tendrils digging into his flesh. "Your Majesty," quickly cut off his arm. Dong Guangyi shouted. Zheng Donglai hesitated for a moment. Dong Guangyi quickly said, "It'll be too late if we don't cut it now." Swoosh! His long blade flashed and cut off Zheng Donglai's right arm. Zheng Donglai angrily glared at Dong Guangyi as his right arm fell to the ground. Dong Guangyi hurriedly said, "If we don't cut off your arm, you'll lose your life. Do you want your life or your arm?" He knew that Zheng Donglai must have thought that he was taking the opportunity to take revenge. He thought that if Chu Li could resist for so long, so could he. However, he did not know that it was not normal for Chu Li to resist for so long. Zheng Donglai would not last more than a few breaths. Chu Li had a chance to catch his breath, and the God Prohibition seal had loosened. Relying on the remaining supreme, true, supreme titanium scripture and the inner energy that Sun Mingwei secretly replenished, it was enough to break through. The force on his body slowly circulated and grew stronger. A smile gradually appeared on his face. He had been passively beaten up. The wheel of fortune had turned. It was his turn now. Zheng Donglai's face was pale as he stared at Chu Li. They could feel Chu Li's rapidly rising strength. It was obvious that he was about to break the God Prohibition seal. This made the three enlightened masters feel a little hopeless. If they could not kill him under the God Prohibition seal, they would not be able to survive after the God Prohibition seal was broken. Zheng Donglai's eyes focused, and he made up his mind. He fiercely pounced on Chu Li and punched him with both fists. "Chu Li, you will die today." Chu Li suddenly felt a deep sense of danger. He immediately retreated to get away from him. Zheng Donglai sneered. His body suddenly expanded and turned into a stream of light that shot toward Chu Li. Then he exploded. Bang! An earth-shattering sound was heard. Zheng Donglai's body had already been smashed into pieces. An extremely overbearing force pierced into Chu Li's body. Chu Li spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. He was seriously injured. When he landed, his limbs were weak and he could not stand. All of the supreme, true, supreme, titanium scripture was activated to break the God Prohibition seal. Without the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra, the heaven-killing scripture's layer of protection could not stop Zheng Donglai's explosive force. Dong Guangyi and the blade light turned into a waterfall and swept over at an incredible speed. Sun Faxing also burned his body and struck out with his most powerful attack. Sun Mingwei also shot over like a flame. She was prepared to block in front of Chu Li. Chapter 2902. Chu Li said, "If you really don't want to, then forget it. It's up to you whether you want to kill him or not. It has nothing to do with me," Sun Mingwei said coldly. Chu Li shook his head. "Looks like it's better not to kill him. Would you do such a thing if you crippled your elders for the sake of your children?" Sun Mingwei stared at him intently. Chu Li said, "What's wrong with sparing his life? He'll still suffer when he reaches the Outland. There's a war with the Azura realm there. An enlightened master will probably have to go to the battlefield. It's better to stay here." Sun Mingwei scoffed. "Do what you have to do. Don't worry about me." Chu Li smiled and said nothing. Sun Mingwei said, "I'll leave first. Don't go to the Great Light Peak just yet." Chu Li nodded slowly. Sun Mingwei stood beside the forest and looked up at the sky. A gust of wind blew and her white clothes fluttered. She looked like an otherworldly fairy who wanted to ride the wind and fly away. Chuli had an urge to reach out and grab her so that she wouldn't leave. He could feel the loneliness in Sun Mingyue's heart, but he could not get over it. She was too lonely. There was no one in the Holy Church of Light who could talk to her freely. She could not speak her mind and had to keep everything to herself. Fortunately, she had Li Ming, who could relieve her of her loneliness. "I'm leaving." Sun Mingyue waved her hand and disappeared. Chuli looked in the direction. She disappeared inside. He shook his head and left. The next moment, he returned to the evergreen pine forest in 100,000 Hills. He found some pine seeds in the forest and felt the lifespan contained in them. Although they were not as good as the evergreen pine forest, they still had a lot of lifespan. One pine ball could absorb 100 years of lifespan. He found dozens of pine balls and filled a bag. When he returned to the High Duke's public house, he handed it to Shui Ling and asked her to dig out the pine seeds. Shui took the bag of pine balls and smiled. "Master, do you like pine seeds?" Chuli shook his head. "They're not useful. Don't cook them." "Yes." Shui smiled. Chuli disappeared again and appeared at the ice pool. The little vermilion bird was standing beside the ice pool. It was taking a nap on a piece of ice out of boredom. When it saw Chuli, it glanced at him lazily and ignored him. Chuli smiled and waved his hand, then stood in front of the ice pool. This time, he was going to try to raise the grades of the Azure Dragon and the Origin-Devouring Tortoise. After witnessing the mystic tortoise shield, he realized that the power of spiritual beasts should not be underestimated. If he could activate the 2 spiritual beasts to the middle grade, he would not even need to do anything himself. The Golden Dragon and Mystic Tortoise alone would be enough to dominate the world. When his master, Zhou Dunley, ascended to become a heavenly deity, he upgraded his dragon to a gold dragon, which gave him a glimmer of hope. He had asked his master, Zhou Dunley, about how he was able to upgrade the purple dragon to a gold dragon because the dragon itself had a fortuitous encounter. It had eaten a treasure of heaven and earth, but it was unable to completely digest it, so it was stuck at the purple dragon's grade. When he ascended to the enlightened realm, the spiritual energy from the heavens beyond the heavens descended upon him. And when he became an enlightened realm god, Zi Long obtained this spiritual energy, and with the help of his enlightened realm dragon taming art, he was able to catalyze the natural resources he ate in one fell swoop. Thus, the purple dragon leaped into the golden dragon. Most of the credit could not be attributed to him. So if an enlightened realm god wanted to raise their spiritual beast to the middle grade, it would only be possible if they had a fortuitous encounter like his purple dragon did. Even so, Chuli believed that with his current cultivation level, it would not be a problem for him to upgrade the Azure Dragon to a purple dragon, and the Origin-Devouring Tortoise could also upgrade it to a Mystic Origin Tortoise. With the help of 2 rank 1 spiritual beasts, his power would increase greatly. He would no longer have to fight alone like before, where he would be ambushed at every turn and would have to fight against several people at once. With the help of the 2 spiritual beasts, he could also ambush others. Just thinking about it made him excited, and he could not wait to upgrade his spiritual beast to rank 2. The ice pool was silent. Through the observation of the omniscient mirror, he saw that the 2 spiritual beasts had fallen into a deep sleep, and his power was slowly increasing. He pondered for a moment, then leaped into the ice pool and went to the Azure Dragon's side. He rode on its back, and the little beast in his mind began to open its eyes. Suddenly, a strange force was born from his dantian, and it circulated along the route of the dragon taming technique, turning into the inner energy of the dragon taming technique. Once the little beast closed its eyes, this strange force would be hidden in the depths of his dantian, as if it had never appeared before. The heart technique he created was based on the method of the heavenly demonic power, and it could completely conceal the inner energy. This was also to avoid the senses of the spiritual beasts, or else once it appeared in 100,000 Hills, it would become a target, and all the spiritual beasts would be able to sense it. The inner energy of the dragon taming technique was rich, but the inner energy of an enlightened realm god was different and could not be mentioned in the same breath as the Grandmaster's boundary. Moreover, He was circulating the perfected body technique of the dragon taming technique, and it was completed by referring to the other two heart techniques. Once the inner energy of the dragon taming technique entered the Azure Dragon's body, the force of the Azure Dragon that was originally circulating slowly suddenly sped up, and the speed of improvement suddenly skyrocketed by more than 10 times. As he continued to inject the dragon taming technique, the speed of improvement was still increasing, and it even reached 10 times, 100 times. Originally, it would take 100 years to improve, but now it only took a year. Even so, Chu still felt that it was slow. The lifespan of a dragon was long, and even if he cultivated the ageless longevity technique, it was impossible for him to have such a long life. He could not afford to waste it, so he continued to inject the dragon taming technique and continuously increase the speed of improvement. The scales of the Azure Dragon began to slowly fall off, and one by one, the scales that were as warm as jade slowly fell off its body and slowly fell to the bottom of the pool, reflecting the clear bottom of the pool with a green light, and it looked like a dream. After the scales of the Azure Dragon fell off, it quickly grew another purple scale, and as it fell off, it grew another. When the green scales on its body had completely fallen off, it had all turned into purple scales, and from an Azure Dragon to a purple dragon. The appearance of the purple dragon changed, and it became thicker. Originally, it could be hugged, but now it could not be hugged. Chu had been focused on circulating the dragon taming technique and had neglected the passage of time. He did not know how much time had passed. The dragon opened its eyes, and although the light was gentle, it contained a vast majesty and pressure. It did not come from the spiritual force, but from the energy of its soul. This was the powerful talent of the dragon clan, and with each evolution, the soul would become stronger by several times. Chu reckoned that the god-punishing thunder sword could not hurt it now, and the energy of its soul was only slightly inferior to the spirit tiger. Chu reached out and touched its back, and his voice rang in its mind. "You've finally reached rank 1. Work harder, and strive to reach rank 1 as soon as possible." Rank? The purple dragon's voice rang in Chu-Li's mind, and its voice was thick and powerful. "It's not that easy to transform into a golden dragon," Chu-Li said. "If we work hard together, we'll eventually become a golden dragon." The purple dragon nodded slowly. At this moment, the vitality-devouring tortoise had already woken up, and it gently floated to his side. Chu-Li smiled as he reached out to touch its shell, and then his newly created inner energy circulated along the route of the black tortoise power. 10 days later, when Chu-Li woke up, he saw that the vitality-devouring turtle had shrunk to the size of a palm. It was small and dainty, and it did not match the rank of a rank 1 spirit beast like the vitality-devouring turtle. It was hard to believe that it could be a threat to humans. Chu-Li thought about it and decided to leave the 2 spirit beasts in the 100,000 Hills. After becoming a rank 1 spirit beast, they would have the ability to protect themselves, and they did not need to stay in the ice pool. They could venture into the 100,000 Hills, and they might come across some exotic treasures. After consuming them, they could quickly increase their rank. However, these exotic treasures were usually guarded by spirit beasts, and it was inevitable that they would have to fight. Chu-Li was relieved that the 2 spirit beasts were traveling together, and if they could not win, they could run away. Chapter 2903. Chu-Li sat down in the gazebo and exhaled. With the 2 spirit beasts, he was emboldened and less stressed. Even if they were tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of miles away, as long as he called them in his heart, the 2 spirit beasts would rush over. This gave him a lot of confidence. A rank 1 spirit beast was more powerful than an enlightened master. With these 2 spirit beasts, he would not be afraid even if he was surrounded. Last time outside Saint's Peace City of the Zheng Dynasty, if the 2 spirit beasts had helped, they would have killed all of them. "Young master, the Ji Dynasty has lost." Shui curtsied. Her white clothes fluttered and her fragrance wafted. Chu-Li was stunned and asked, "Who defeated the Ji Dynasty?" "The Zheng Dynasty, of course." Shui said. Chu Li frowned. The Zheng dynasty did not retreat? No. Shui shook her head. Young master, although you killed the Zheng dynasty's emperor, the Zheng dynasty did not retreat. The new emperor was even more agitated and wanted to destroy the Ji dynasty to avenge Zheng Donglai. Chu Li looked thoughtfully in the direction of the Zheng dynasty. It seemed that he had underestimated Zheng Donglai. Before the siege began, he had already made arrangements for the aftermath. Therefore, he was able to perish without any worries. Zheng Donglai's successor must have received instructions from him. Zheng Donglai's son succeeded the throne? Chu Li asked. Shui said, it's his younger brother, Zheng Shilai. Zheng Shilai. Chu Li thought about the information on Zheng Shilai. This Zheng Shilai was said to be a playboy. He was not a big deal among the imperial family's sons. He was unrestrained and did not do proper work. Moreover, he often acted out of line and was unexpected. He was the complete opposite of Zheng Donglai. Zheng Donglai was talented and had a calm and generous personality. He had studied hard since he was young and had been apprenticed to several masters. On the other hand, Zheng Shilai was like an ignorant and incompetent playboy. It was hard to believe that Zheng Donglai would pass the throne to Zheng Shilai. Did King Ping fight? Chu Li asked. Shui shook her head. King Ping is the crown prince. He can't fight easily. Moreover, King Ping requested a fight, but the emperor did not agree. Chu Li frowned. It seemed that because of the empowerment, they did not want King Ping to fight. This led to their defeat. King Ping was the only true general of the Ji dynasty. The rest were not considered generals. They were not capable enough. Shui Ling said, we've lost 10,000 men in this battle. The border has been breached, and we've advanced 100 miles. Chu Li's expression darkened. 10,000 people was not a small number. Even though it was only a drop in the bucket compared to the great Ji dynasty's army, when he thought about how many people would be sad and in pain if 10,000 families were destroyed, his heart skipped a beat as if it was weighed down by a huge rock. King Ping has arrived at the border and led his army to stop the Ji dynasty's border army. Shui Ling furrowed her brows and said, but we managed to maintain the situation and stop the Zheng dynasty from advancing. It's going to be very difficult to recover the lost land. Chu Li said slowly, I will go and take a look. He glanced at Shui Ling. Shui Ling said, Master, I also just received the news. Chu Li sighed. 10,000 soldiers, 10,000. With a gloomy expression, he waved his hand and suddenly disappeared. He did not appear by King Ping's side. Instead, he went to the border between the Zheng dynasty and the Ji dynasty. Since he had traveled to the Zheng dynasty's Saints' Peace City previously, he was already very familiar with the roads between the Ji dynasty and the Zheng dynasty. He could arrive at the border of the Ji dynasty and the Zheng dynasty with just a shift. Everywhere he looked, there were ruins and corpses everywhere. His expression was gloomy, as if it had frozen over. It could be seen that the corpses in the villages were all killed by weapons. Moreover, they were all innocent people who wanted to escape but were hunted down. He could imagine the helplessness and despair of these villagers. He could clearly see the resentment condensed in the sky above the villages. He stood in the void and chanted the rebirth mantra to dispel the resentment and send these unwilling souls into reincarnation. He flew past the villages at an incredible speed. There were no survivors. The Zheng dynasty's soldiers were extremely ruthless and determined not to leave a single person alive. He followed his intuition and soon arrived at a mountain peak. There was a sect on this peak that was experiencing the calamity of annihilation. Out of the 300 people in the sect, there were only 30 or so people left. They were all women and children. There were 100 grandmasters who besieged this sect. Each of them had a murderous aura that was almost tangible. It was obvious that they had killed many people. Moreover, they cultivated the military core technique. Not only did the murderous aura not harm their foundation, but it also helped their cultivation speed. This military core technique relied on killing to improve. The more people they killed, the faster they would improve and become stronger. However, this hard technique had a major drawback, which was that their lifespan was extremely short. They only had a lifespan of 100 years, which was even worse than that of an ordinary person. In the past, very few people cultivated this military core technique. Most of them were outlaws who would cultivate it for a moment of glory. They would rather be brilliant for a moment than to be mediocre for the rest of their lives. They also knew that it was difficult to survive in the military because they were too weak. Now, the military core technique was popular because everyone could enter the Grandmaster's boundary after death. Cultivating this hard technique was a shortcut to enter the Grandmaster's boundary. Chuli looked coldly at these Grandmasters. He saw that their eyes were cold and emotionless as they stared at the women and children. He slowly raised his hand to eliminate them. "Stop!" Chuli shouted. It was like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in their ears. The 100 Grandmasters were shocked and looked up at the sky. Chuli stood in the void and looked down at them. He said coldly, "You don't even spare the women and children. You don't deserve to be called men." "Enlightened Master," someone exclaimed. Then the Grandmasters calmed down. An enlightened master could not casually attack a Grandmaster. Otherwise, they would be punished by the heavenly rules. They did not believe that an enlightened master would break the heavenly rules because of 30 women and children. Otherwise, an enlightened master would have broken the heavenly rules. Chuli looked at them coldly. "Did you guys destroy the few villages around here?" "Yes, we did," a young man shouted. "Who are you?" Chuli said. "Ha, the world's #1 master, Chuli. I've heard so much about you. I heard that you even killed our late emperor." The young man was handsome, but his expression was wild and heroic. He was not afraid of Chuli at all. "I don't know how powerful you are. Unfortunately, Chuli, you don't dare to attack us." Chuli said lightly, "Who said I don't dare to attack?" "Ha, you're an enlightened master. You can't casually attack Grandmasters unless you hurt your blood relatives." The handsome young man laughed. "So Chuli, no matter how strong your martial arts is, you still can't do anything to us." Chuli flicked his finger. Pop! The handsome young man fell backward. There was a bloody hole in between his eyebrows. Blood was flowing out. Chuli glanced at the crowd. The 99 Grandmasters' expressions changed. They were calm and fearless. They were already Grandmasters. So what if they died? They would still ascend to the Grandmaster's boundary. There was no difference between going to the Grandmaster's boundary now or in the future. It was better to go earlier. They wanted to go to the Grandmaster's boundary to see the beauty there. So, their fear of Chuli disappeared. Instead, they took a step forward and were eager to attack Chuli. Chuli sneered. "Do you think you can ascend to the Grandmaster's boundary if you die in my hands?" "Chuli, what do you mean?" a middle-aged man asked. Chapter 2904. As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 God-punishing lightning swords in his mind split into 99 God-punishing needles and shot out. 99 Grandmasters suddenly screamed and fell to the ground, rolling on the ground. They did not even care about the dirt and dust on their bodies. They no longer had the air of a Grandmaster, and they no longer had the imposing manner of a Grandmaster. Chuli stared at them coldly. He had already seen through their minds and knew that they used killing as a means of advancement. They were able to advance from the innate mastery's boundary to the Grandmaster's boundary without entering the victorious state to cultivate. Instead, they achieved it by killing. Tens of thousands of Ji Dynasty's soldiers and civilians had died in their hands. Xueling told him that the great Ji Dynasty's army had lost tens of thousands of people. These were only the soldiers. Compared to the soldiers, the Zheng Dynasty had lost hundreds of thousands of civilians. The border between the Zheng Dynasty and the Great Ji Dynasty was 1,000 miles long. If they were to push forward for another 100 miles, the entire Ji Dynasty's civilians in this region would be massacred. Among them were many martial arts masters and sections. Nowadays, martial arts were flourishing in the world. It was common for sects to have a few sects within 100 miles. However, these small sects were all destroyed by them, and their belongings were looted. Regardless of whether it was men or women, children or the elderly, no one was spared. Although there was no such thing as mercy in a war between 2 armies, to treat these commoners so cruelly just for the sake of cultivating martial arts was too cold-blooded and cruel. Chu Li did not hesitate to kill them. Killing could improve one's mental cultivation method very quickly, so they were unable to extricate themselves and killed the common people like pigs and dogs. Leaving such experts in the world would only bring disaster to the world, so it was better to kill them as soon as possible. When he thought of this, his heart hardened as he watched the 99 grandmasters wailing on the ground without a change in his expression. Not far away, more than 30 women and children looked at Chu Li timidly. Although Chu Li had saved them, they were grateful but did not dare to approach him. Chu Li's appearance was too terrifying, as if he could devour them. "I'll fight you to the death." A young man leapt up. Chu Li sneered. Without moving, the god-punishing thunder sword shot out. Bang! The youth's head suddenly exploded, and white brain matter mixed with blood splattered everywhere. The young man fell to the ground, motionless. He was already dead. The grandmasters looked up at the sky. However, the gate of heaven did not appear for a long time. His dead companion did not ascend to the heavens beyond heaven. Their hearts were instantly filled with fear. What Chu Li said was true. If they were killed by him, their souls would scatter and they would not be able to ascend to heaven. This was the thing that they were most afraid of. Death was not scary, but the most frightening thing was that they would have to bid farewell to this boring world and not be able to ascend to the realm beyond heaven. Thinking of this, they began to think of committing suicide. Chu Li said faintly, "Don't think that you'll be able to ascend to heaven just by killing yourselves. You've been struck by my god-slaying sword, and your souls have been damaged. You can no longer ascend to the Grandmaster's boundary. It's better for you to give up." Everyone was furious and desperate. They endured the pain and pounced on Chu Li. Chu Li stood in the void and looked down at them. He sneered, and the god-punishing thunder sword turned into a god-punishing needle again. The Grandmasters screamed and fell to the ground again. They held their heads and rolled around in pain. The pain was unbearable, but their bodies were already weak. They could not even commit suicide. The pain this time was even worse than before, but they could not pass out. They could only endure the pain. Chu Li's face was as hard as stone. His eyes were as cold as ice. There was a hint of a sneer at the corner of his mouth. When did they think about pain when they killed innocent people? If he did not make them suffer so much that they could not die, how could he face those people who died tragically? "Great hero Chu, you're so merciful. Please let us go." A middle-aged man pounced on Chu Li and knelt on the ground. He banged his head on the ground so hard that his forehead was bleeding. He pleaded loudly. Chu Li was unmoved. He did not even look at him. He saw how this middle-aged man tortured and killed others in his mind. When they annihilated the sects in the martial arts world, they would encounter resistance. They were usually the final victors, and they would torture and kill the losers. Compared to their methods, Chu Li only gave them a small punishment. Therefore, all of these people deserved to die. They deserved to die 1,000 times. "Great hero Chu, we won't dare to do it again." Another middle-aged man knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. "Great hero Chu, we can help you deal with the Zheng dynasty. As long as great hero Chu is merciful and let us go." Yes, great hero Chu. We'll definitely follow your orders." More than half of the grandmasters knelt on the ground to express their loyalty. Chu Li stood in the void with his hands behind his back. He looked into the distance as his white robe fluttered. "Great hero Chu, great hero Chu, please spare our lives." Chu Li shook his head secretly. These people were soldiers who had been through blood. Yet they were begging for mercy. It was clear that the Grandmaster's boundary was a great temptation to them. They could even abandon everything to go to the Grandmaster's boundary. Chu Li stood with his hands behind his back and ignored them. When they begged for mercy, their pain became worse and did not ease at all. After an hour, they gradually lost hope. They knew that Chu Li had a heart of stone and would not spare them. Therefore, their despair turned into endless anger. They did not care about how terrifying Chu Li was and started cursing. "Chu Li, you son of AB*TC. Chu Li, you'll die a horrible death. Chu Li, just you wait." I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Bastard Chu, you'll die a horrible death. Your wife will die a horrible death too. Chu glanced at them indifferently. The god-punishing thunder sword turned into a god-punishing needle again and shot out. Everyone let out a shrill cry once more. All of their faces were warped and hideous to the extreme. They could only let out shrill cries, yet they were unable to speak. Their eyes rolled back, and only the whites of their eyes could be seen. Even so, they were still very conscious and could not pass out. Chu looked at them calmly. He did not show any mercy. He would only stop after torturing them for a few days and nights. Only then would he be worthy of the people who died tragically. He looked down at the women and children and said calmly, "I'll send you to the back." As he said that, he waved his sleeve and 30 women and children flew up. They were all people from the martial arts sects, so they did not scream. The scene before them became faster and faster. Finally, there was only a distorted light and shadow that flew past. After a while, they arrived outside a towering city. Shuo was already waiting outside the forest with some people. When she saw Chu Li, she greeted him, "Master." "Settle them down," Chu Li said. Shuo nodded lightly. Chu Li suddenly disappeared and returned to his original position. There was another group of grandmasters. There were 100 of them. Chu Li frowned. This military center technique was really something special. These 100 grandmasters were also successful. It was very likely that they had cultivated it in this battle. These 100 grandmasters were helping, trying to relieve the pain of their companions. They channeled their energy, but it was useless. The grandmasters were still in so much pain that they could not speak. They could only hold onto their companions tightly, hoping that their companions would release them. However, they could not say anything. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror and saw what they were doing in the minds of these masters. He did not hesitate to shoot the god-punishing needles. Suddenly, screams were heard. Chu Li looked coldly at almost 200 grandmasters. Chapter 2905. Chu Li lunged forward and took the initiative to meet the attack. The young man sneered. His palms remained the same as he hit Chu Li's chest. He was startled and looked down at his abdomen. Chu Li slowly retreated. His face was as pale as paper. He sheathed the Imperial Sky sword in his hand. This time it was not an act. He was really pale and weak. He tried to use up 600 years of his lifespan and succeeded. It was obvious that the Imperial Sky sword had advanced a little and its power had greatly increased. However, he only had a few years left after using 600 years of his lifespan. The feeling of suddenly using his lifespan was extremely painful. It was as if his body had suddenly aged by a few hundred years and became much weaker. It was no different from being sick. The young man looked down at his abdomen and looked up at Chu Li. His face was full of unwillingness. He wanted to mobilize his strength, but he could not. The strength around his body was quickly fading and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chu Li shook his head. "Let me tell you something. Your body and soul will be destroyed too. You won't be able to ascend to the Outland." "You?" The young man glared at him and sneered while wiping his mouth. Chu Li, you won't have a good ending. The grandmasters will hunt you down until you die. No matter how powerful you are, you won't be able to escape from the grandmasters." Chu Li smiled faintly. "All right, I'll wait for them. I'll destroy every one of them. I want to see how many rank 1 Celestials the Outland has, and how many can be lost. Not only will the Outland kill you, but they will also kill your wife." The young man sneered. Chu Li narrowed his eyes and laughed. "That depends on how capable they are. You won't be able to see it." This hit his weak spot. Although Shao Qi's martial arts was strong, she could not stop a rank 1 Celestial. If the Outland really sent a rank 1 Celestial to deal with her, it would be dangerous. It seemed like he had to be more careful. Although Hui Qing was powerful, she was not a rank 1 Celestial. She should be a rank 2 and could not protect Shao Qi. "Chu Li, you're dead." The young man slowly fell to the ground and was silent. There was no light shooting into the sky. His soul had been destroyed. The Imperial Sky sword was indeed sinister. This sword destroyed his soul, and he completely disappeared from the world. He looked up at the sky to see if they would send more Celestials. He suddenly frowned and appeared on the Jade Guardian Island of the High Duke's public house. Xiao Qi and Xiao Shi were playing chess when Chu Li appeared out of thin air. Xiao Shi was shocked and glared at him, but she knew that something urgent must have happened. Chu Li reached out and pulled the two women into his arms. Without saying a word, he suddenly disappeared and reappeared in the ice pond the next moment. A gust of wind blew past the clear, mirror-like surface of the pond. It was an indescribably refreshing and pleasant feeling as it brushed against their faces. The two girls were instantly refreshed. The air in the High Duke's public house was very good. Moreover, because of the formation that Chu Li had set up on the Jade Guardian Island, the spiritual force was abundant and the air was even better. However, compared to the air here, it was still a lot worse. Chu Li could clearly feel the pores all over his body twitching. "Why are you here?" Xiao Shi turned her head and sized him up. "Not going to Spirit Crane's Peak. It'll be dangerous. I don't want to implicate them," Chu Li said. Although the two spirit cranes of Spirit Crane's Peak were strong, they were not as strong as the purple dragon and the dark origin tortoise. He was more at ease with them protecting him. Logically speaking, Celestials would not dare to come to 100,000 Hills. They would definitely die if they came. This was a forbidden area for enlightened masters and Celestials. As he spoke, he looked at the ice pond. The purple dragon and the dark origin tortoise were not in there. They had obviously gone to look for treasures, so he called out to them in his heart. Xiao Shi scoffed and said, "You killed people again?" Chu Li said, "Those animals deserve to die. There are still a few Celestials. I'm guessing there will be more Celestials coming to kill me. Or even you. I've become a burden again, haven't I?" Xiao Qi said. Chu Li shook his head and said, "They might not come after you, but it's safer for you to come." Xiao Shi said, "Chu Li, why doesn't the Grandmasters let you go?" "Because I'm a different species. I'm not under their control, and I even ruined their plans." Chu Li shook his head and said, "Then don't provoke them," Xiao Shi said. Chu Li smiled and said, "If I can't act freely and become an immortal, won't my efforts be in vain? Act within your means and don't mess around," Xiao Shi said. "The war between the Ji dynasty and the Zheng dynasty isn't something you can interfere with. It's better for you to get out of it." Chu Li smiled and said, "I thought I could handle it, but it seems like I'm in control now. I heard that this war is very important and there are too many interests involved. It's not something you can handle alone." Xiao Shi frowned and said, "I heard from Lu Yuron that there are many Celestials involved." Chu Li slowly nodded. Roar. Suddenly, a dragon's roar was heard. Then, a purple silhouette appeared in the sky and was faintly discernible among the clouds. "Is that the purple dragon?" Xiao Qi asked softly. Chu Li smiled and said, "It's my original dragon that I transformed into. It's already so majestic." Xiao Qi exclaimed. Xiao Qi's eyes lit up as she stared at the purple dragon that was leisurely descending. The purple dragon rode on the fog and arrived above them in the blink of an eye. Then, the fog dissipated and the purple dragon suddenly descended. When it was about to reach the ground, it stretched out its claws and gently pushed the purple dragon away. A strong wind was stirred up, and once again it slowly descended. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. This purple dragon was deliberately showing off its ability to control the wind and clouds in front of the two ladies. Xiao Shi turned and asked, "Can I ride it for a spin?" Chu Li said no. The purple dragon was extremely docile in his hands because they had an extraordinary relationship. However, it was very arrogant to others. The pride of the dragon clan was deep in their bones. If it was not for the two ladies' close relationship with him, he would not even bother to get close to them. Xiao Shi rolled her eyes at him, but did not force him. She only stared at the purple dragon curiously. The purple dragon's appearance was indeed different from the white dragon and azure dragon. It was more majestic and ancient, which made people feel reverent. It was hard to imagine that Chu Li could control such a giant dragon. A ray of light flashed, and a palm-sized mystic origin turtle appeared on Chu Li's shoulder. Xiao Shi and Xiao Qi stared at the mystic origin turtle curiously. Chu Li explained, and the two ladies were amazed. They did not expect such a huge spirit-devouring turtle to to shrink to such a small size. It was truly novel. The wonders of a spirit beast were beyond imagination. Chu Li said, "Stay here for a few days and wait for the news to die down before going to Goddess Attraction Mountain." Goddess Attraction Mountain was not safe now because the Celestials could arrive. When that time came, Master and the others would not be able to stop them. No matter how he thought about it, this was the best place. "All right, you can go now." Seo Sure waved her hand and said, "With them here, no one will make things difficult for us. Moreover, the scenery here is great. Bring some daily necessities over. We'll be in isolated cultivation so that we won't be a burden to you." Chu Li nodded. He went back and asked Shuo Ling to prepare everything. Then, he brought everything here. There were tents, blankets, clothes, and some toiletries. There was even a small red clay stove for brewing tea and a jade cup for drinking tea. When everything was ready, Chu Li returned to where he was previously. When he appeared, there were already thousands of people around him. Chapter 2906. As soon as Chu Li appeared, a middle-aged general shouted, "Who are you?" Chu Li retracted his enlightened master's force field, his skills, and aura, making him look like a grandmaster. That was why the middle-aged general dared to shout. Chu Li frowned and leaped into the air, stepping on the void as if he was walking on flat ground. He looked down at them and said, "Chu Li from the Ji dynasty. You're Chu Li." The middle-aged general's expression changed. Chu Li said faintly, "They killed innocent people and tortured and killed defenseless civilians. They deserve to die 1,000 times for their crimes. They have been executed." "You killed them?" The middle-aged general's face darkened. 200 grandmasters was a huge force and was crucial to this war. Without these 200 grandmasters, the war that was supposed to be a sure win suddenly became uncertain and full of variables. Chu Li said, "It's me. If you want revenge, you can come to me." "Chu Li, you're an enlightened master," the middle-aged general shouted. "Enlightened masters are not allowed to attack grandmasters." "There's no such rule in my eyes," Chu Li said. "As long as you kill the Ji dynasty civilians, I don't care if you're an enlightened master, a grandmaster, or even an innate master. I'll kill you all the same." You. The middle-aged general pointed at him, but did not dare to scold him. Chu Li was so unscrupulous. If he really dared to scold him, Chu Li would definitely kill him. Even if he really had scruples, he would not have killed these 200 grandmasters. To an enlightened master, this was a grave sin. Chu Li scoffed. "You guys have killed many of my Ji dynasty soldiers, right?" He used the omniscient mirror and realized that he was wrong. These soldiers were all elites, but they had never fought with the Ji dynasty before. They were preparing to go to the battlefield. Everyone stared at him angrily. "Retreat," the middle-aged general ordered. The soldiers stared at Chu Li in dissatisfaction, but obeyed the order and started to retreat. They gradually left the 200 grandmasters on the ground. What made them angry was not the death of the 200 grandmasters. As soldiers, they did not care about anything else. They only saw the twisted and ferocious faces of these 200 grandmasters. It was obvious that they had suffered great pain before they died. Chu Li must have tortured them. Such a method was too despicable. Why torture when they were killed? Chu Li narrowed his eyes and looked at the middle-aged general. The middle-aged general's heart turned cold. He knew that the situation was not good. He said in a low voice, "Chu Li, the war between the two armies is a national matter. It doesn't involve personal grudges. As an enlightened master, how can you interfere in the war between two countries?" Chu Li replied faintly, "I'll intervene if I want to. It seems like you're good at managing the army. You're a rare talent. Who's your marshal this time?" "Our emperor," the middle-aged general said in a low voice. His heart kept sinking. He had walked the line between life and death so many times that his senses were sharp. He could feel Chu Li's killing intent. He was just a grandmaster. He had no chance of escaping from Chu Li. Chu Li asked, "Zhang Shalai?" "Yes." The middle-aged general nodded. Chu Li nodded slowly. "I want to see how many protectors he has with him this time." He then glanced at the middle-aged general. "You don't want to leave the battlefield, do you?" "That's right. If you want to kill him, then kill him." The middle-aged general said solemnly. Chu Li sighed. I'm not someone who kills indiscriminately. It's just that if you don't die, the Ji dynasty's soldiers will be the unlucky ones. I have no choice but to cripple you. As soon as he finished speaking, his azure eyes flashed. Suddenly, the god-punishing thunder sword in his mind dispersed and shot toward more than 100 people among the 1,000 people. The middle-aged general and more than 100 people covered their heads and screamed. Kill! The anger that the soldiers had been suppressing suddenly burst out. They charged toward Chu Li without fear of death. Chu Li shook his head and stood in the void. He did not dodge the arrows that were shot at him. The arrows that fell like rain bounced off a meter away from Chu Li and fell to the ground. The arrows were useless against him. Chu Li shot more than 100 god-punishing needles again. Another 100 soldiers fell to the ground and screamed. After a while, Chu Li had crippled these 1,000 soldiers. From now on, they could no longer be provoked. If they had the slightest killing intent or sense killing intent, they would immediately pass out. It was a pity for the middle-aged general. He was the backbone of the Zheng dynasty and a future star general. Chu Li looked at them with satisfaction. He scoffed and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared outside a military camp. The endless number of tents covered the sky like white clouds in the sky. It was impossible to see the end of it. Fortunately, he had the omniscient mirror to observe the situation, so he did not get lost in these tents and was able to find Zheng Shilai's tent. Zheng Shilai's tent happened to be in the middle of the entire camp. It was where the killing intent condensed. Moreover, with the power of the army, this tent was almost invisible. If he did not have the omniscient mirror and the heavenly star insight skill, he would not have seen this tent. Moreover, this military formation was formed by 100,000 soldiers. The killing intent and blood energy gathered together. With a unique formation, it formed an unpredictable power. No one could fight it alone. Even an enlightened master would not dare to go directly against it. Chu Li stood outside the military formation and pondered, thinking of a way to break it. Every formation had a way to break it. The way to break this military formation was to disrupt its order. As long as the military camp was in chaos, the military formation would be in chaos and its power would be greatly reduced. Therefore, it was common to attack the camp first and then break the formation. He could see Zheng Shilai's tent, but he could not break in directly. Otherwise, with the suppression of the military formation, he would not be able to use half of his power. Zheng Shilai alone could kill him. However, it was not a good feeling to watch Zheng Shilai sit in the military camp and sit peacefully in the Ji dynasty. Chu Li looked at a void and said, Dong Guangyi, you've got guts. As soon as he finished speaking, Dong Guangyi's figure appeared in the void where he was looking. He was dressed in green and held the black tortoise shield. He laughed proudly. Haha, Chu Li, you've got guts. How dare you come here? Chu Li said, I'm just here to see what's going on. All right, I've killed 200 of your grandmasters and 2 celestial beings. They brutally killed innocent people in the Ji dynasty. This is the Zheng dynasty. 200 grandmasters? Dong Guangyi frowned. 200 grandmasters was not a small number. It had a huge impact on the entire army. This was the Zheng dynasty's most important victory in this war. However, it was destroyed by Chu Li. It was really infuriating. Chu Li said, Do you know what they've done? So what if I do, and so what if I don't? Dong Guangyi scoffed. He was extremely resentful towards Chu Li. Chu Li said, If you know, I'll send you to die with them. If you don't, I'll spare your life. You're so arrogant, Dong Guangyi said in disdain. Chu Li, we know each other now. You don't have the ability to send me to heaven. Chu Li chuckled and shook his head. Do you think I've sent them to heaven? Dong Guangyi frowned and stared at Chu Li. Chu Li scoffed. Their souls will be destroyed. It's impossible for them to reincarnate. This is the consequence of wreaking havoc in the Ji dynasty. Chapter 29:07. Chu Li laughed out loud. Too much. Compared to their cruel killing of civilians, this is still considered light. If there's a heavier punishment, they'll be sent to the 18th level of hell and tortured layer by layer. You're so cruel. Dong Guangyi shook his head. You're considered a prominent figure now, yet you're so narrow-minded. How laughable. Chu Li frowned. He could not be bothered to talk to him anymore. He said in a low voice, Young? Pao Shu? Stupid Su Qi is so timid. Guanadin? Xiao Qi Yi sang Jun. He could feel Dong Guangyi's strength and the immense pressure he exerted. It was obvious that his cultivation level had improved greatly. You have a good eye. Dong Guangyi chuckled with a proud look. I had a fortuitous encounter, and my martial arts improved greatly. I'm not far behind you now, am I? He realized that Chu Li was also improving, but in terms of cultivation level, he was already better than Chu Li. Moreover, he had cultivated a mystical technique that could restrain Chu Li's palm energy and Sky Killer Sword, so he was not afraid of Chu Li. Even if he could not win, he could retreat unscathed. Chu Li was a little afraid of Dong Guangyi. The most important thing was the Black Tortoise Shield. If the Black Tortoise Shield could block the Sky Regicide Sword, then his most powerful move would be useless. He could only use the Supreme Vajra Palm. The power of the Supreme Vajra Palm was tyrannical, but it lacked a bit of murderous nature and had a bit more of a neutral and peaceful feeling. Chu Li said, cultivation level is cultivation level. We'll only know who's better when we fight. Make your move. As soon as he finished speaking, he struck with his palm. A golden light descended from the sky and landed on his palm. Both palms turned golden and dazzling. Dong Guangyi raised his hand, and the shadow of a black tortoise slowly appeared in the void and landed on him. His body was faintly in the shape of a black tortoise, as if a black tortoise's soul was protecting his body. A blue light flashed in Chu Li's eyes, and a god-punishing thunder sword shot out. Bang! Dong Guangyi swayed, but quickly steadied himself. He smiled proudly. Chu Li, soul attacks are useless against me. I'm protected by my ancestor's soul. Don't waste your energy. Chu Li said faintly. It's extraordinary indeed. Then take this. He pressed his palms towards Dong Guangyi. Two golden lights flashed and instantly reached Dong Guangyi's chest. This was also the power of the Supreme Vajra Palm. As long as the palm was unleashed, it would definitely hit, and the opponent would almost never be able to dodge it. After his palms turned golden, his body also sped up along with his palms. His speed was faster than usual, like a streak of light. Dong Guangyi smiled and let his palms hit his chest. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. Dong Guangyi took a step back, and so did Chu Li. Chu Li frowned. The powerful rebounding force from his palms forced him to retreat. He could feel that his palm force had not penetrated Dong Guangyi's body. Dong Guangyi was like the supreme Vajra, indestructible body that he had cultivated and could block his palm force. He had always been the one to block the palm force of others. It was rare to see such a situation. Dong Guangyi laughed out loud. Chu Li, are you hungry? Chu Li's face darkened as he struck out with his golden palms again. Bang! Dong Guangyi still let his palm hit his chest. After both of them took a step back, Dong Guangyi was even more delighted. He knew that he could completely block Chu Li. He laughed and said, Chu Li, what else do you have now? Why don't you try using the Sky Killer Sword? As he spoke, he raised the black tortoise shield in his left hand. Chu Li's face darkened as he sneered. Don't be so smug. I'd like to see whose cultivation level is higher. Again. Bang, 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 bang. He kept waving his palms to hit Dong Guangyi's chest, as if he was being stubborn. He did not hit anywhere else, only his chest. Dong Guangyi wanted to completely destroy Chu Li's confidence. He wanted to push him down from the throne of the world's #1 master and take the throne himself. That was why he accompanied Chu Li in his madness and wanted to defeat him head-on. Bang, 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 bang. The continuous muffled sound was like the beating of a drum. However, there were no soldiers around. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to observe and found that all the soldiers in the military camp were practicing as usual. They were not curious about the muffled sound and did not leave the military camp to observe or inquire about it. Chu Li knew that Dong Guangyi must have discussed this with Zheng Shilai. Even so, he could see that the Zheng dynasty's soldiers were strict. However, in terms of military discipline, King Ping's soldiers were not inferior to them. As long as King Ping was given enough time, it was possible for him to turn the tables and even turn the tables. Dong Guangyi kept laughing and mocking Chu Li. Chu Li, can you do it? If you can't, just admit defeat. I won't kill you. Is this how the world's #1 master acts? I'm embarrassed for you. Chu Li, in my opinion, just admit defeat. Don't feel indignant anymore. Go back and practice well. Come back and challenge me again. Forget about 100 palms. Even if you hit me another 100 palms, you still won't be able to defeat me. Just forget it. All right, it's been 200 palms. You do have some skills. I'm a little impressed by you. Your cultivation level is low, but your stamina is strong. I'm impressed. If you can withstand 200 palms, what about 300? Can you still hit 300 palms? Dong Guangyi kept attacking Chu Li's confidence, trying to destroy his spirit. He was speechless at the fact that Chu Li was able to launch 200 palm strikes in a row. He knew that Chu Li's powerful palm technique required him to exhaust all of his inner energy with each strike, but he was able to replenish it in time. It was evident that the heart technique he cultivated was marvelous. If Chu Li only relied on the supreme titanium scripture, he would not be able to instantly restore his cultivation level. However, with the help of the life and death scripture, spiritual energy from the Outland was endless. It was forcefully poured in and turned into the supreme titanium scripture's inner energy, restoring his cultivation level. After 300 palms, Dong Guangyi was a little surprised. The black tortoise's shadow behind him began to solidify. He had already used the black tortoise's power, which was the accumulated power of the black tortoise shield in his hand. The palm-sized black tortoise shield accumulated a huge amount of power. He would usually pour energy into the black tortoise shield when he was free, but he could not fill it up no matter what. It was like a bottomless pit. The more he was filled, the more he wanted to fill it up. He did not know how much inner energy he had poured into it. This made him extremely curious. He had also tried it before. Whenever he needed it, he could draw the inner energy that he had poured into the black tortoise shield. It was endless, and he did not know when it would be used up. With this black tortoise shield, he did not have to worry about his inner energy being used up. The black tortoise shield power that he used was recorded on the black tortoise shield. Its power was amazing, but it consumed a lot of inner energy. However, with the black tortoise shield, he did not have to worry about not having enough inner energy. He was confident that he could exhaust Chu Li. At this time, he became stubborn and insisted on exhausting Chu Li. After 400 palms, Dong Guangyi was still full of inner energy. There was no abnormality, but his mouth was not idle. Chu Li, you've used all your strength, haven't you? What's the use? World's #1 master, I'm embarrassed for you. If it were me, if I couldn't win after so many palms, I would have lost my face long ago. Your skin is thicker than your cultivation level. The power in Chu Li's palms gradually weakened. The golden light was no longer as dazzling as before, and his movements were much slower. Dong Guangyi became more and more pleased. Your cultivation level is indeed strong, but unfortunately, there's always someone stronger than you. Chu Li, you're still a notch below me. Chu Li pursed his lips and remained silent. He continued to attack. Chapter 29:08. Seeing that Chu Li was silent and was desperately waving his palms, and his palm energy was getting weaker, Dong Guangyi became more pleased. He grinned. Chu Li, stop. Don't lose too badly and embarrass yourself. After all, you were once the world's #1. Chu Li continued to attack without saying a word. What's the point of fighting like this? I'll never run out of inner energy. What about you? Dong Guangyi shook his head and laughed. You can't do it anymore, can you? Do you think you'll have a chance to defeat me because you recover your energy fast? Chu Li scoffed. Dong Guangyi laughed. What's the use of recovering energy fast? My inner energy is endless. Ha ha. Chu Li's face was so gloomy. Dong Guangyi became more pleased when he saw Chu Li's expression. Thinking that he was the world's #1, he could not help but feel proud and heroic. He felt that he could do whatever he wanted in the world, and the title of the world's #1 would belong to him. Since ancient times, how many people had truly become the world's #1 in tens of thousands of years? He would definitely leave his name in history. Chu Li continued to attack, and the golden light on his palms dimmed. On the other hand, Dong Guangyi felt that although Chu Li's palm energy was slightly weaker, it was not too weak. This was how it should be and how it could show off Chu Li's abilities. If Chu Li was so weak that he could not even use his palm, it would be a trick. Dong Guangyi sighed. Thinking of your power earlier, I'm on guard. I can't be like you. Chu Li stared at him coldly and continued to attack without saying a word. Dong Guangyi laughed. But don't worry, I won't be like you. I'm luckier than you, haha. Chu Li frowned and scoffed. Dong Guangyi said proudly, to be honest, my aptitude isn't that great either. Come and listen. His palms dimmed, but his palm energy was only slightly weaker. He continued to attack. He vaguely felt that the Supreme Vajra palm was about to advance. After so many times of using all his strength, the Supreme Vajra palm was showing signs of a breakthrough. This was how the Supreme Vajra palm broke through. It could not be cultivated normally, but it needed a strong opponent to stimulate and suppress it. Dong Guangyi said, this mystic tortoise shield can store inner energy. As long as you pour your inner energy into it, you can extract it when you need it. You can extract as much as you pour in. Think about it. How can you compare to me? Chu Li frowned. It won't dissipate. I won't. Dong Guangyi shook his head. Chu Li scoffed and said, it really is amazing. Dong Guangyi laughed heartily and was extremely pleased with himself. Showing off in front of Chu Li made him exceptionally satisfied. Making his opponent envious and jealous was the happiest thing for him. He laughed out loud. So, Chu Li, don't waste your energy. Just admit defeat now, and I'll spare your life. I just need to cripple your cultivation level. Chu Li sneered. What's the difference between destroying my cultivation level and killing me? He had too many enemies. Once his martial arts were crippled, he would have no way out. Dong Guangyi obviously thought so. He wanted to kill him with a borrowed knife. Chapter 2909. Dong Guangyi was stunned. Chu Li smiled and lightly clapped his palms together. Dong Guangyi did not care and continued to meet the attack with his palms. Bang! Dong Guangyi was instantly sent flying. He used his original inner energy to meet the attack and naturally suffered a loss. Chu Li's palm energy had doubled this time and could unleash 15 times the power of his inner energy. Chu Li's cultivation level was already very high, and it showed how powerful the second level of the Supreme Vajra palm was. Dong Guangyi spat out a mouthful of blood in the air and stared at Chu Li in shock. Chu Li sneered. Let's see if you can still be proud this time. Bang, 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 bang. After he attacked, the Supreme Vajra palm advanced even faster and brought him to his opponent like a stream of light. There was no way to avoid it, and it landed on Dong Guangyi's body. Dong Guangyi flew around in the air, but no longer spat out blood. Instead, he smiled. Chu Li's expression gradually turned gloomy. How could he not break through his defense? The Black Tortoise power did not have such powerful defense. Dong Guangyi's defense was now stronger than the supreme, indestructible body of Diamond. This was indeed abnormal. It was not the Black Tortoise power. He must have another special technique to protect himself. Ha! Ha! Ha ha! Dong Guangyi laughed in the air. Chu Li frowned and stared at him, but continued to attack. If this continued, he might be able to master the third level of the Supreme Vajra palm. When that time came, he did not believe that Dong Guangyi could still block it. Dong Guangyi laughed heartily and said, Do you think you can beat me after your martial arts have improved greatly? Ha! Ha ha! I'm sorry to disappoint you, ha! He laughed proudly and ignored Chu Li's palms on his chest. Chu Li asked coldly, What martial arts is this? This is the magical effect of the Black Tortoise Shield. Dong Guangyi smiled. The Black Tortoise Shield has an inheritance. The Black Tortoise Shield power. How is it? Does it look good to you? The Black Tortoise Shield power. Chu Li gritted his teeth. This guy's luck was so good that it made people jealous. Dong Guangyi laughed heartily. When a mysterious tortoise shield, is combined with the mysterious tortoise shield, its power is multiplied. Last time, I couldn't master the mysterious tortoise shield and lost to you, Chu. I became courageous after knowing my shame and went into isolated cultivation. In the end, I managed to master in one go. Speaking of which, I have to thank you, Chu. Chu said coldly. You're welcome. I have to thank you. Dong Guangyi laughed heartily and said, if it wasn't for your provocation, I wouldn't have been able to cultivate this divine art, and I wouldn't have been able to snatch your throne as the world's #1. It's too early to say that, Chu said coldly. Both of his palms continued to strike out, and each strike had 15 times the strength of his body. However, such a terrifying palm force could not break through Dong Guangyi's defense. There was a strange layer of energy around Dong Guangyi's body that silently canceled out the palm force. Chu felt that this layer of power must have originated from the black tortoise shield. Chu, you still want to win? Dong Guangyi shook his head and laughed. I really admire your tenacity. It is indeed not luck that you can become the world's #1. Unfortunately, you lost in the hands of luck. I am not as tenacious as you, nor am I as hard-working as you. It is luck that I can suppress you. Chu said, luck can't last forever. You have to be careful. Haha, don't worry. As long as you become the world's #1, no one will dare to provoke you. You don't need too much luck. Dong Guangyi laughed out loud. You don't have to attack me. I won't fall for it. I'm extremely confident in luck. Chu sneered. There will be someone with better luck. Then it will depend on your own ability. Dong Guangyi laughed. But you won't be able to see that. Chu, if I were you, I would have given up long ago. Why struggle and waste my effort? Chu said calmly, I don't want to die. Haha, there aren't many people who can say that so calmly. Dong Guangyi gave him a thumbs up and looked impressed. Especially since you're the world's #1 master. You dare to say that you're afraid of death. You're brave. Chu sneered. Dong Guangyi said, but I understand you. Chu, you've offended too many devas and the entire Outland. Once you die and go to the Outland, you won't have a good life. Although the Outland is good, your life there is not as good as here. Chu scoffed and said nothing. What he said was the truth. Once he ascended to the Outland, he would be in great trouble. There would be no good outcome and no way to survive. He would definitely be tortured to the point of wanting to die. He could not go to the Outland. Dong Guangyi shook his head. If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. I won't let you ascend to the Outland and suffer. Chu narrowed his eyes and said, you want to destroy my soul? Dong Guangyi laughed. My offer is still valid. As long as you admit defeat, I'll cripple your martial arts and spare your life. You can find a secluded place to hide and live out your days leisurely. Dong Guangyi continued. It seems that if you cripple your martial arts for 60 years, you'll be considered an ordinary person. You want to ascend to the Outland, but reincarnate. What do you think? Am I being merciful? Chu? Chu sneered. Thank you very much. As the two spoke, they exchanged palms. Bam bam. Sounds were incessant and sounded like muffled thunder. In the end, Chu could not care less about restraining his energy. Everything within the range of their exchange was destroyed. Whether it was grass, trees, or rocks, they were all turned into powder. When the wind from their palms swept the powder away, there was nothing left on the ground. Dong Guangyi laughed. How about it, Chu? Do you admit defeat? No, Chu said in a low voice. Just as his palms were about to hit Dong Guangyi's chest, a layer of blue light suddenly appeared. Bam! Dong Guangyi's hair suddenly stood up as if it had exploded. His body was stiff and motionless. Only his eyes were wide open as he stared at Chu in disbelief. Chu reached out and grabbed his left palm, then pulled it hard. However, the black tortoise shield seemed to be glued to his palm. He could not pull it away. Chu scoffed and flicked a few acupuncture points on Dong Guangyi's wrist. Dong Guangyi's wrist instantly went limp and his palm lost its strength. He could only watch as Chu pulled the black tortoise shield away and kept it. At that moment, he had regained his mobility. His inner energy surged, and he pounced on Chu. Shameless. Chu pushed his palms forward. Bam! Dong Guangyi flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Li could feel that his defense had been greatly reduced. The strange force that counteracted the palm energy had weakened by more than half. There was less than a third of it left. His supreme Vajra palm could break through it. Chu Li smiled but immediately restrained himself and continued to attack. Bam, 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 bam. He attacked faster. The spiritual energy of the Outland turned into a golden light pillar that enveloped his body. It entered his pores and turned into the supreme Vajra scripture's inner energy. Dong Guangyi flew back and forth in the air. This time, he kept spitting out blood, and his complexion was getting worse. Chapter 29:10. Bam, 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 bam. Under the continuous attacks of the supreme Vajra palm, Dong Guangyi's aura gradually weakened. He suddenly somersaulted in the air, took out a pill from his bosom, and swallowed it. Chu Li's palm suddenly turned blue and hit him lightly. Dong Guangyi's movements froze. Chu Li reached out and grabbed the jade bottle and the pill, stuffing them back into his sleeve. Then, he used his other hand to quickly tap on the man's body, trying to seal his acupuncture points. However, he realized that it was difficult to seal his acupuncture points because a strange force was circulating, constantly dispelling the force of his finger. His left palm turned blue and hit him again. A cold light flashed on his waist and was about to break his limbs. Bam! Dong Guangyi suddenly burst into a dazzling light, and a huge force surged out. Chu Li disappeared in a flash and appeared 10 feet away in the next moment. He was worried that Dong Guangyi had used the mutual destruction technique. Dong Guangyi's cultivation level was high, and this technique was enough to kill him. Even if it could not kill him, it could still severely injure him and prevent others from taking advantage of it. After a while, he frowned. Dong Guangyi had escaped. It was obvious that he had used some kind of treasure to escape and saved his life at the crucial moment. He quickly focused and used the mysterious tortoise shield to sense Dong Guangyi's location, but could not sense it at all. Chu Li shook his head. This treasure was really unusual. Lucky people were annoying and could not be killed no matter what. Chu Li had clearly used his ultimate move to condense the power of the thunder orb into the supreme Vajra palm. After the power of thunder and lightning merged, the person who was hit by the palm froze. The power of thunder and lightning greatly increased the power of the supreme Vajra palm and could directly break through the defense. The mysterious tortoise shield could not stop it. Dong Guangyi could still escape under such power. Chu Li could only sigh at the importance of luck. He wanted to kill him, but was not determined because Dong Guangyi had endless treasures and many fortuitous encounters. He wanted to explore them one by one. Even if he could not use them, he could give them to his disciple, Pang Shurji. He wanted to cripple him first and then dig out his mind. He could not bear to kill him. Otherwise, when Dong Guangyi was hit by the supreme Vajra palm, he could have killed him with the Sky Killer Sword and succeeded. However, it still might not be able to kill him. This was because this kind of escape-type protective treasure was usually able to operate on its own. Once the danger approached, it would immediately take effect, and Dong Guangyi would still be able to escape. Hopefully, Dong Guangyi's treasure could only be used once. Otherwise, it would be really troublesome. The next time he tried to kill him, he would be able to escape. He suddenly smiled and took out the black tortoise shield from his bosom. The mystic tortoise shield actually produced a strange power. It struggled out of his hand and was about to disappear. Chu Li scoffed softly. His right palm was once again dyed with a layer of blue light as he reached out and grabbed the mystic tortoise shield. His right palm, that had executed the supreme Vajra palm, was exceptionally fast. It caught hold of the mystic tortoise shield when it was hidden in the void. Thunder and lightning wrapped around the supreme Vajra palm and drilled in, colliding with the strange aura of the mystic tortoise shield. Bang! A muffled explosion sounded from within the black tortoise shield. Chu Li felt an incomparably tyrannical recoil. The shield of the mystic tortoise contained an enormous amount of power, and he was knocked back the moment he touched it. He almost vomited blood from the impact. He hurriedly retracted the supreme Vajra palm force and frowned as he looked at the mystic tortoise shield that was about to leave his hand. He did not think that this treasure would actually recognize him as its owner. Although he had snatched it back, he could not control it. Dong Guangyi, who was thousands of miles away, sneered as he sat in a cave. This cave was filled with strange runes, but it was a space of its own. This cave could not be sensed, so it was the best place to hide. He sat here with an incomparably calm heart. He was not afraid that Chu Li would chase after him at all. He took out another jade bottle from his bosom and stuffed 2 black pills into his mouth. Then, he revealed a cold smile. He had underestimated Chu Li. He was indeed a treacherous person. He had been hiding his strength and showing weakness all along. It was only at the last moment that he revealed his ferocious fangs and turned the tables. He had almost beaten himself into the gutter and could no longer turn the tables. If it was not for the Heaven Evasion ruler, he would not have been able to escape from Chu Li's evil hands. This guy was too despicable. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly. The veins on the back of his hands were bulging like earthworms. He must take revenge. Chu Li was too naive. Did he really think that he could get the Black Tortoise shield by snatching it? If the Black Tortoise shield was so easily snatched, it would not be a treasure anymore. Although it was now in Chu Li's hands, Chu Li could not do anything about it. In the end, it would still return to his side. It would only recognize him as its owner. When he thought of this, he could not help but laugh out loud. When he thought of how Chu Li had watched the Black Tortoise shield escape from his hand and disappear in a thin air, he suddenly felt extremely happy. It was a pity that the Black Tortoise shield could only defend and not attack. Otherwise, he could directly control it to kill Chu Li from thousands of miles away. It would be the best opportunity when Chu Li was not defending. What a pity! He could not stop shaking his head. He immediately realized that he was too greedy. The Black Tortoise shield was already extremely rare. It was the best treasure in the world. He frowned. Why was he not back yet? Logically, Chu Li should be studying the Black Tortoise shield now. Once he used his inner energy, the Black Tortoise shield would begin to resist and escape from Chu Li's hand to appear beside him. Was Chu Li so patient that he was not studying the Black Tortoise shield after so long? According to common sense, he would be eager to study something that he had taken back with great difficulty. Could it be that Chu Li was in trouble and could not care about the Black Tortoise shield? It seemed that it was a good thing that the Black Tortoise shield did not return. Maybe someone had avenged him. When he thought of this, he calmed down. It did not matter who had the Black Tortoise shield. As long as he used his inner energy to study it, the Black Tortoise shield would naturally escape and return to his side. When he thought of this, he continued to use his inner energy to heal himself. Chu Li looked at the restless Black Tortoise shield that wanted to escape from his hand. He frowned. His mind raced, and he suddenly used the Black Tortoise power. As soon as the Black Tortoise power was used, the restless Black Tortoise shield immediately calmed down. Chu Li smiled. As expected, the Black Tortoise power was continuously injected into it. It was indeed like a bottomless abyss. No matter how much inner energy was injected, it did not fill up. It was as if it could contain an endless amount of inner energy. Chu Li tried to integrate a trace of the Vermilion power's inner energy into the Black Tortoise power. Unfortunately, as soon as the Vermilion power's inner energy appeared, it was immediately attacked by the aura of the Black Tortoise shield. It was immediately destroyed. It seemed that it only absorbed the aura of the Black Tortoise power. Chu Li shook his head helplessly. His spirit was lifted again. There was an inheritance hidden in its body. How could he obtain it? He searched for a while, but found nothing. He did not feel any inheritance. It only felt like a bottomless pit. No matter how much inner energy was injected, there was no reaction. He tried to shoot a god-killing needle at the Black Tortoise shield, but it was destroyed without a sound. The inheritance still did not appear. Chu Li frowned. Was it because his luck was not good enough that he could not obtain this inheritance? Or was it because Dong Guangyi had already obtained it and it had completely disappeared? Chapter 2911. The skinny middle-aged Ning Zhe frowned. Your Majesty, I would like to know, as an enlightened master, Can Chu Li kill grandmasters so recklessly? Aren't enlightened masters not allowed to attack grandmasters? Zheng Xilai nodded slowly. He straightened his body and scoffed. We enlightened masters can't simply attack grandmasters, but Chu Li is different. His enlightened master isn't simple. He's different from us. So, he can kill grandmasters without fear, and the grandmasters won't care? Ning Zhe frowned. If this goes on, won't the whole world be in chaos, and all grandmasters will be in danger? He can kill as he pleases. We can't control him even if we want to. Zheng Xilai shook his head. Chu Li's way of becoming an enlightened master is different from other enlightened masters. The heavenly rules have limited restrictions on him, so it's as you said, he can kill whoever he wants. Then we have to get rid of him no matter what, Ning Zhe said in a low voice. Moreover, he can summon the heroes to attack together. He can kill grandmasters without any scruples. That means he's the enemy of all grandmasters. All the grandmasters want to get rid of him. No matter how many grandmasters there are, it's useless against him. Zheng Xilai said faintly. To an enlightened master, a grandmaster is not worth mentioning, so don't even think about killing Chu Li. My brother brought 8 top-notch celestial beings and 4 enlightened masters and still failed to kill him. No matter how many grandmasters you bring, it'll be useless. Don't waste your energy. So we can only use military formations? Ning Zhe said. Elderly Yanming was secretly pleased, but his face was calm. He said slowly, if we want to kill Chu Li, we can only use military formations. Military formations were different from other formations as they were condensed from a soldier's killing intent and vigor. It had a natural suppressive effect on inner energy. No matter how powerful an enlightened master was, he would be limited and weakened in a military formation. His connection with the spiritual energy of the outside world would be cut off. Even if he was still connected, it would be strenuous as he no longer had endless inner energy. As long as he no longer had endless inner energy, he could be killed through exhaustion. No matter how strong Chu Li was, once he entered a military formation, he would turn from a dragon to a worm and be killed by the soldiers. This would clear the Zheng dynasty's obstacle in devouring the Ji dynasty. Looks like we can only use military formations. Zheng Xilai nodded slowly. He got up from the dragon throne and paced in front of the table with his hands behind his back. The generals stared at him without blinking, waiting for his decision. Even Ning Zhe, who was originally against it, couldn't help but hesitate. After a while, Ning Zhe shook his head and said, Your Majesty cannot take the risk personally. We cannot afford to lose Your Majesty again, Zheng Xilai said lightly. If my brother can die, why can't I? Zheng will take over after I die. Zheng Un was Zheng Donglai's son. Originally, he should have been the crown prince. Unfortunately, Zheng Donglai didn't pass the throne to his son for the sake of the Zheng dynasty. Instead, he gave it to his younger brother. Zheng Xilai was grateful to his elder brother's generosity and had long decided to return the throne to his elder brother's son. Your Majesty, you can't, Li Yanming hurriedly said. Zheng Xilai cast a sidelong glance at him. Li Yanming said, Your Majesty, although Prince Sin is a martial artist, he is too upright and not suitable to inherit the throne. What do you think? Zheng Xilai squinted at him. Li Yanming said in a low voice, It's better to let Prince Han inherit the throne. Prince Han has a mellow temperament. Elderly, getting bolder. Aren't you afraid of death? Zheng Xilai said snappily. As a subject, it was a taboo to interfere with the selection of the crown prince or even the succession of the throne. One's head could fall at any moment. Even if one's heart belonged to someone else, one would not say it out loud. One would only silently support it through actions and leave room for others. If Li Yanming directly objected like this, then he was not far from death. The emperor was also extremely disgusted with such a practice. It was a taboo for a subject to do so. Li Yanming gave a fist salute and bowed solemnly. He said in a low voice, Your Majesty, I'm just an old man. If I die, then so be it. However, I can't watch the Zheng dynasty's momentum decline. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Zhang Xilai shook his head. I made up my mind. There's no need to say anything else. We'll do as generally suggested and use me as bait to lure Chu Li here. Your Majesty, Ningzhe said in a low voice. Actually, there's another idea that can lure Chu Li here. Speak, Zhang Xilai said. Ningzhe said, it said that Chu Li values relationships the most. If we can kidnap his wives here, we won't have to worry about Chu Li not coming. Zhang Xilai nodded slowly. This is a good idea. However, it won't be easy. Chu Li will definitely be on guard against this. We won't be able to break into Goddess Attraction Mountain. The battle at Goddess Attraction Mountain had made Chu Li famous. However, what was more powerful was the golden dragons on Goddess Attraction Mountain. With the protection of 2 golden dragons, no one dared to seek death by going up. Your Majesty, there's actually another person, Ningzhe said slowly. The Bishop of the Holy Church of Light. Bishop's son? Zhang Xilai's expression changed slightly. He was very curious about cult leader's son, who always wore a white veil and did not show her true face to others. He also knew that she was extremely beautiful and had an extremely good relationship with Chu Li. However, she had also participated in the previous siege, and her grandmaster had died because of it. She had completely fallen out with Chu Li. Ningzhe said, if Bishop's son is here, Chu Li will definitely come. In that case, Zhang Xilai paced around with his hands behind his back. After some thought, he finally sat back on the dragon table. We can't afford to offend Bishop Sunday. Sun Mingyue's martial arts was tyrannical. She was also one of the best among enlightened masters. She was far from being comparable to him. She was probably only below Chu Li. If he offended Sun Mingyue, she would be bound by the heavenly rules. However, it would not be a problem for her to attack him. Ningzhe said, you could tell Bishop's son directly. Let her lure Chu Li here. If she agrees, it means that she has nothing to do with Chu Li. If she doesn't agree, I'm afraid the 2 of them will still be together. You have to be careful. That makes sense. Zhang Xilai patted the dragon table lightly and said, I can give it a try. Ningzhe, go to the Great Light Peak and deliver this letter for me. Also, pass this message to Bishop Sunday, yes. Ningzhe smiled bitterly to himself. This was not a good job. One wrong move could result in a beating. Zhang Xilai said, Bishop's son has an extraordinary temperament. Don't worry, she won't act recklessly. Yes. Ningzhe nodded vigorously. Your Majesty, I will go through fire and water without hesitation. Zhang Xilai looked satisfied. Inside the divine light basilica, the morning sunlight was reflected into the basilica by the snow-capped peak, shining in a golden light. Ningzhe stood upright at the bottom of the steps with his head held high. He stared at Sun Mingyue's almond-shaped eyes and watched as she calmly read Zhang Xilai's letter. He sighed to himself. She lived up to her reputation. Although Bishop Sun's face could not be seen, one could tell how beautiful she was just by looking at her figure and temperament. Every move she made was graceful and moving. After a while, Sun Mingyue put down the letter and glanced at Ningzhe. You want me to be the bait to lure Chu Li over? Yes. Ningzhe fist saluted and said, Your Majesty has discussed this with Bishop Sunday. This is the only way to deal with Chu Li. It's better to use Zhang Xilai instead of me. Chu Li doesn't want to kill me now. It's Zhang Xilai. Does he not have the guts to be the bait and come to me? Sun Mingyue said. Chapter 29:13. Chu Li was startled and could not help but laugh. Is something happening in the Zhang dynasty again? He was secretly annoyed. He had already predicted that the Zhang dynasty was not being honest and was going to provoke them again. Now, he wanted to teach them a lesson. Sun Mingyue nodded, her white clothes fluttering like snow. They're going to ambush you and use me as bait to lure you into the military formation. Military formation. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. No matter how stupid I am, I won't go into the military formation, right? If Zhang Xilai is in the formation, do you dare to go in? Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li frowned. If Zhang Xilai is here, I'll give it a try. Zhang Xilai is likely to be the bait. Based on his character, he's likely to be the bait with me. I don't believe you won't take the bait. Sun Minghua said. Can you resist the temptation? Chu thought about it and smiled. I really can't. He then sighed and shook his head. I'm speechless to see such an open scheme. I'm impressed. If he really dares to be the bait, I'll take the bait. Sun Minghua frowned. Chu said, I'm confident. In the military formation, spiritual energy is cut off. Inner energy alone won't be able to support much. Sun Minghua said, Don't you know that? Chu smiled. Of course. If that's the case, you still dare to go in. I'll kill another emperor. I like to see how many emperors the Zheng dynasty has to kill. Chu chuckled. It's not impossible to fight against the world alone. You're just asking for trouble, Sun Minghua said. Chu shook his head. Let's wait and see. The Zheng dynasty has a blood dragon tree. It bears a blood dragon fruit every 100 years. After eating it, one can become a grandmaster through special means. Sun Minghua said, I know you have a special ability with spirit herbs. You might be able to revive them. I'll ask Zheng Xilai for a blood dragon branch. It's up to you. Blood dragon tree? Chu was surprised. There's a blood dragon tree outside the 100,000 hills? It was said that the blood dragon tree was a tree formed from the death of a golden dragon. It contained the essence of the golden dragon's blood, and it also had the special characteristics of the golden dragon. It could absorb the essence of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to form the blood dragon fruit, which had the effect of remolding one's body. Not only that, it could also rapidly raise one's cultivation. He thought it was only a legendary item. Even if it existed, it would only be in the 100,000 mountains and would not appear outside the 100,000 mountains. He did not expect the Zheng dynasty to have such a tree. What concerned him even more was that he did not manage to find out about it. It seemed like the secret guardian's hall was still too far behind the Holy Church of Light. I think Zheng Xilai will agree to it. You can see if it's true when the time comes, Sun Minghua said. Chu nodded and said, Looks like I'll have to return to my identity as Zhao De. I'll follow you and have a look. All right. Sun Minghua nodded lightly. She looked dazed for a moment. At the mention of Zhao De, she felt a sense of familiarity and distance. It had not been a long time since they last met, but it felt like 100 years had passed. It was both strange and familiar at the same time. Chu smiled. Give me a moment. He suddenly disappeared and reappeared after a while. He had already changed into a green robe, and his face had changed to Zhao De's. Although he was not as ugly as before, he was still not handsome. Sun Minghua felt a sense of familiarity when she looked at his face. She shook her head and said, You have to restrain your power. Chu shook his head. It's not good if it's too low. Announce to the public that Zhao De is an isolated cultivation. Since he's an isolated cultivation, based on his talent, his martial arts should have improved greatly. It's good that he has reached this stage. If he's any weaker, he won't be qualified to stand by your side. All right, it's up to you. Sun Minghua nodded lightly. Chu appeared in the Divine Light Basilica. When he appeared, Du Ying, who was at the entrance of the basilica, widened her eyes in shock. She looked at him blankly. Chu smiled and fist saluted. Senior Sister Du, it's been a while. Du Ying regained her senses and quickly said, Priest Zhao, you've come out of isolated cultivation? Chu nodded. If I didn't come out, the bishop would have expelled me from the Holy Church of Light. Du Ying pursed her lips and chuckled. She looked at Sun Minghua and quickly shut her mouth. She nodded slightly and retreated. Her footsteps were a little joyful. Li Meng looked at Chu in surprise and sized him up. She had heard of Zhao De, Priest Zhao's legendary experience, many times. It was said that he was a genius who was second only to the bishop in the Holy Church of Light. She had always been curious, and finally, she had met him in person. She was a little disappointed. At his age, even if he was experienced, it was inevitable that he would be more concerned about his appearance. Everyone said that he was ugly, but he was even uglier than that. He could be considered ugly. Chu also looked at her and nodded. During this period of time, she had improved a lot. It seemed that she had been cultivating very hard and was in a period of rapid improvement. She would only slow down after a while. Priest Zhao, I've heard a lot about you. Li Meng fist saluted. Chu smiled. You're welcome, young bishop. I don't dare to address you as young bishop. Li Meng quickly waved her hand. Chu Li smiled. The bishop's disciple is, of course, the young bishop. You're the future bishop, but you haven't reached the Grand Master's boundary yet, so you can't become a saint. However, it's a piece of cake for you. You flatter me. Li Meng waved her hand. She became wary of Chu Li. As the saying went, those who were unaccountably solicitous were hiding evil intentions. Since he was complimenting her as soon as they met, he must be up to no good. She had to be careful of him. Chu Li saw through her thoughts and nodded to himself. Li Meng's original naivety had faded away. She had become more scheming and shrewd. To ordinary people, this was not a good thing. It meant that the beauty of the heart had faded away. Instead, they were staring at the ugliness of human nature. From then on, the world would no longer be beautiful, only ugly. This was a little cruel to Li Meng, but she had no choice. This was the price that the saint and the bishop had to pay. If she could still maintain a pure heart under such circumstances and adjust herself with a heart that discovered beauty, then she would be truly capable. Sun Mingwe said, Meng Er, I won't lie to you. Priest Zhao is Chu Li in disguise. Master's Junior Chu Chu? Li Meng's eyes widened. Chu Li smiled. Why tell her? If you don't tell her, aren't you afraid that she'll rebel? Sun Mingwe glared at him. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. I'll hide it from her for a while. It'll be more interesting to tell her at the end. Master's Junior Chu, how did you become like this? Li Meng rolled her eyes at him and asked curiously, what martial art is this? Oh, could it be the famous heavenly demonic power? Chu Li turned to Sun Mingwe and said, Li Meng has really improved. Sun Mingwe said, if you can't even guess this, won't your efforts be in vain? Li Meng said proudly, it's all thanks to Masters and Masters Junior's guidance. She had only guessed it after a flash of inspiration. Zhao Day's identity was flawless. No one in the church knew about it. There were many extraordinary people in the church, so they could not find out that Zhao Day was a fake. Naturally, it was not an ordinary disguise technique. In this way, the most powerful disguise technique in the world was the heavenly demonic power. She had guessed it right in one go. Meng Er, don't expose yourself, Sun Mingwe said. Li Meng said, don't worry, Master. Go then. I'll go out with your Master's Junior Chu. If there's anything in the church, you can handle it as you see fit, Sun Mingwe said. If there's anything you can't handle, stay here and wait for my return. Chapter 29:14. Chu Li and Sun Mingwe disappeared from the Divine Light Basilica and appeared outside the Zheng dynasty's military camp. As soon as the two appeared, Zheng Shilai came out to greet them. His bright yellow gown fluttered in the wind, and he looked carefree and unrestrained. He was different from the usual emperor's demeanor and looked more like a man of leisure. Zheng Shilai fist saluted and laughed. Chief Sun, I've kept you waiting. Sun Mingwe covered her face with a white veil and said, You're welcome, Your Majesty. May I know where the blood dragon tree branch is? Hee. Zheng Shilai shook his head and laughed. I won't go back on my words. Don't worry, that thing will be here soon. I hope that you can keep a secret. After all, it's not good to let outsiders know about the blood dragon tree. Sun Mingwe nodded. Of course. Please, Chief. Zheng Shilai extended his hand. Let's talk inside the tent. Sun Mingwe said, You won't trap me, will you, Your Majesty? Haha, you really know how to joke. Zheng Shilai laughed and shook his head. I'm not the kind of person who would plot against an ally. Sun Mingwe nodded. I'm not a good ally to use me as bait. Haha, I'll accompany you as bait. Am I sincere enough? Your Majesty is coming too? Sun Mingwe shook her head. I advise Your Majesty not to take the risk. Once Chu Li appears, he'll take your life before the ambushers arrive. One move from him is enough. I can't even block one move. Zheng Shilai asked in disbelief. Sun Mingwe said, Your Majesty might not know Chu Li well and didn't ask about his past deeds. He usually kills with one move. If he can't kill someone with one move, he usually doesn't kill them. Is there such a thing? Zheng Shilai shook his head. I really don't understand. Sun Mingwe said, That's why your majesty should think twice. Don't put your life on the line. Chu Li won't show mercy. Aren't you afraid, Chief Sun? Zheng Shilai forced a smile. Hearing Sun Mingyue's words, he suddenly felt a little guilty. Although he was not afraid of death, he was not willing to die just because he had become the emperor. Previously, he did not care about the position of emperor. He had been forced to become the emperor by his elder brother. However, after he became the emperor, he realized that it was not as bad as it seemed. Everything had changed. His word was good as gold and as good as jade. He only needed to give an order and someone would carry it out. He did not need to put in any effort at all. It was truly more worrisome than being Prince Xiaoyao. After he became the emperor, he found that the officials did not oppose him as strongly as he had imagined. Instead, they were very cooperative with him. This made him less worried, so he wanted to enjoy himself more. If what Sun Mingyue said was true, that Chu Li could kill him with one slash, then he would have to think it through carefully. His gaze suddenly came into contact with Sun Mingyue's clear eyes. Her seemingly smiling eyes seemed to reveal a sense of mockery and disdain. Although it disappeared in a flash, he acutely caught it and instantly became angry. As the ruler of a country, he could find any beautiful woman, but he could not find a woman with a status like Sun Mingyue. Moreover, it was rare to find a beauty like her, so he had always looked at Sun Mingyue in a different light. However, today, the woman whom he had always looked at in a different light looked down on him. He felt extremely angry. He was not only dissatisfied with Sun Mingyue's arrogance, but also dissatisfied with his own guilty conscience and cowardice. He said in a low voice, "Then I'd like to see Chu Li's skills." Sun Mingyue shook her head. "Your Majesty, you're courting death. I heard that the relationship between you and Chu Li is very deep," Zheng Shilai said with a faint smile. "We can be considered close friends." Sun Mingyue nodded. "Chu Li is an extremely smart person. He's a great friend. Unfortunately, the world makes fools of people. In the end, I won't have any friends." Her tone was indifferent, but Zheng Shilai's heart inexplicably softened. His anger was reduced by half. He could feel that it was lonely at the top, especially when Sun Mingyue was a woman. It was even more difficult. Chu Li coughed. "Bishop, this is my church's priest, Zhao Hede." Sun Mingyue seemed to have just remembered him. She said to Zheng Shilai, "He's responsible for sending the draconic branches back." "Bishop's son, do you really want to try to plant the draconic trees?" Zheng Shilai asked. Sun Mingyue nodded. "I do have that intention." "Bishop's son, do you know the harsh environment in which the draconic trees grow?" Zheng Shilai shook his head. "It's not that I'm looking down on the Holy Church of Light, but the draconic trees are too provocative. It's very difficult to survive. I advise you not to waste your effort." "How can I be satisfied if I don't try?" Sun Mingyue said. "Very well, then you could try. I can make the decision and give you 2 branches." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Sun Mingyue did not stand on ceremony. Zheng Shilai said, "Let's enter the main tent. I'll go get the draconic branches right away." "All right." Sun Mingyue nodded slowly. The 3 of them entered the main tent. Suddenly, a dense aura rushed towards them. The pressure also followed. It was as if they were in a world of ice and snow. Gusts of cold air were like needles pricking them. If they relaxed even a little, they would be suppressed. Sun Mingyue squinted her bright eyes and remained silent. Through this dense aura, which was also the power of the military formation, one could tell the strength of the army. The stronger the army, the stronger the aura and the power of the military formation. She could clearly feel that the Zheng dynasty's army was more powerful than the Li dynasty's cavalry. Chu Li, who was Zhao De, chuckled. "The Zheng dynasty's army lives up to its reputation." Zheng Shilai smiled proudly. "The Zheng dynasty has always pursued elite soldiers. One of them can fight against 10. It's not the number of soldiers that matters, but the quality. It's extraordinary indeed," Chu Li praised. Zheng Shilai asked, "How is it compared to the Li dynasty?" "The Li dynasty's cavalry is slightly inferior," Chu Li said slowly. "However, the Li dynasty's imperial guards are superior. Your Majesty, if you have the chance, You can go and see the Li dynasty's imperial guards. Then I must see it. Zheng Xilai was not convinced. After the three of them entered the main tent, they moved at an incredible speed. They arrived at a tent like 3 gusts of wind. Zheng Xilai invited the two of them in and suddenly disappeared. Chu Li squinted his eyes, trying to find out where Zheng Xilai went, but realized that he could not sense it. The place he went to was strange and blocked his senses. He took the opportunity to observe his surroundings with the omniscient mirror. Under the omniscient mirror, he could clearly see the inauspicious energy above and around the military formation. It was red and as thick as fresh blood. Chu Li felt like he was walking in blood as his surroundings surged with a sticky feeling. He frowned. This feeling was extremely uncomfortable and made him want to vomit. Sun Mingwei turned to look at him. Chu Li understood her gaze. She wanted him to take the opportunity to see the situation clearly so that he would not barge in blindly and find a way out. Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingwei did not say anything else. She closed her eyes and sat cross-legged on a low couch, motionless as if she was meditating. Chu Li did the same and sat cross-legged on another low couch. The omniscient mirror observed his surroundings and searched for the mystery of this military formation. At the same time, he combined the omniscient mirror with the heavenly star insight skill and tried his best to deduce the flaws of the military formation. However, all formations had doors of life and death. Where there was life, there was death, and where there was death, there was life. Therefore, no matter how powerful a formation was, there would always be a flaw that would leave a way out. Chu Li suddenly smiled and nodded slowly. The combination of the omniscient mirror and the heavenly star insight skill was indeed amazing. They really deduced the life door of this military formation. Chapter 29:15. He initially thought that since there was such a legend about the blood dragon tree, dragon blood was the most important thing to it. To others, dragons were a distant legend. They could not see them with their own eyes. Even if they could see them on Goddess Attraction Mountain, it was impossible for them to get close to them. It was even more impossible for them to obtain dragon blood. Finding a dragon in the 100,000 mountains was even more difficult. Since dragons usually lived high above the clouds, they could not be seen by the naked eye. However, dragon blood was very easy for him. It was not difficult to convince the purple dragon to give him some blood. Unfortunately, it was not dragon blood, which would be troublesome. He had scanned Ning Zhe's mind before, but did not find the method to cultivate the blood dragon tree. Only one person in history knew the method, and that was the enlightened master. Now, the enlightened master was right in front of him, but he had a rare item that suppressed the omniscient mirror's prying. Didn't they say that the blood dragon tree was formed by watering it with dragon blood? Chu Li smiled. Could the legend be fake? It's a mix of truth and falsehood. Zheng Xilai smiled and said, who knows? It was such a long time ago. It is hard to avoid exaggeration and exaggeration. It would be good if 10% of it was true, or even less than 10% was made up by someone with ulterior motives. Chu Li's omniscient mirror and heavenly star insight spun rapidly in his mind. Ideas emerged one by one and were quickly extinguished. After a while, he said thoughtfully, if it's not dragon blood, could it be something else? Zheng Xilai's smile froze. Then he shook his head. Well, I really can't say. Chu Li immediately determined that it was blood. However, it was not dragon blood. Could it be human blood? His mind quickly deduced, but he could not come up with a conclusion. Footsteps were heard as Ning Zhe strode in. He lifted the curtain and came in with another wooden box. He presented it to Chu Li. Priest Zhao, please take a look. Chu Li put down the previous wooden box and opened the new one. Immediately, 2 dry branches that were no different from the previous one appeared in front of him. Chu Li did not need to circulate his spiritual energy. The life and death scripture could instinctively feel the spiritual energy rushing toward him. It was full of vitality. Good, this is a living one. Chu Li was all smiles as he accepted the wooden box. His inner energy turned into spiritual energy and seeped into it. He sensed the spiritual energy from the blood dragon tree and discovered that it was unusually pure. Moreover, it carried a unique corrosive intent. Upon sensing his spiritual chi, the blood dragon tree's spiritual chi was like a hungry wolf that had seen flesh and blood. It pounced over with all its might and devoured the spiritual chi in a single gulp. After that, it continued to invade his body, wanting to completely devour him. Chu Li was stunned. He frowned and pondered. As soon as his spiritual chi was cut off, the corrosive intent immediately retreated. It was clear that the blood dragon tree was an extremely aggressive species, and it was almost impossible for any spiritual herbs to survive in its surroundings. It was the only one that could dominate the area. He frowned because the life force and spiritual chi of this blood dragon tree were like water without a source. Although it was strong and scorching, it was weak. Moreover, after devouring his spiritual chi, it could not be converted into life force. Life force and spiritual chi should be one with spiritual herbs, but they were not applicable to the blood dragon tree. Life force was life force, and spiritual chi was spiritual chi. The spiritual chi was strong, but the life force was rapidly diminishing. Chu Li estimated that he could only last for 2 days. Sun Minghua looked at Chu Li. Zheng Xilai laughed and said, "What's wrong, Holy Priest Xiao? What's wrong? Could it be that it's still fake this time?" He cast a cold gaze at Ningzhe. Ningzhe hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, I dare not mess around this time. It's definitely real." "Oomph, I don't think you dare mess around." Zheng Xilai scoffed and looked at Chu Li. Chu Li sighed and said, "If it's real, then I'll take my leave." Sun Minghua said, "I'll go with you. Don't be in such a hurry to leave, Bishop. We still have things to discuss." Zheng Xilai chuckled and said, "Are you going to go back on your word now that you've obtained the blood dragon tree?" Sun Minghua looked at him coldly. "Haha, I was just joking." Zheng Xilai laughed and waved his hand. "Don't mind me, Bishop Sunday. I know that Bishop Sun is a man of his word and will never go back on it." "All right, then I'll stay." Sun Minghua scoffed. Zheng Xilai laughed and said, "Then I'll welcome you with open arms. Please wait for a moment, Bishop Sunday. I'll personally send Holy Priest Zhao out of the camp, or else he won't be able to leave." "Please," Sun Minghua said. Zheng Xilai fist saluted and walked out. "Holy Priest Zhao, you must hurry up. 3 days will pass in the blink of an eye." Zhao De, who was Chu Li, said, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I won't let them die. I'll definitely think of a way to save them." "Ha!" Zheng Xilai laughed and said, "That couldn't be better." Zheng Xilai and Chu Li moved quickly. Ningzhe followed closely behind them. After sending Chu Li out of the camp, Zheng Xilai watched as his silhouette gradually disappeared. He shook his head and said, "His light body technique is really good. He can return to Great Light Peak in less than 3 days." "Your Majesty, should we?" Ningzhe raised his hand and made a slashing motion. Zheng Xilai shook his head and said, "No, unless we fall out with the Holy Church of Light. It's not good to do that." Ningzhe said, "Are we just going to let them have it so easily? What do you think?" Zheng Xilai chuckled and said, "Bishop Sun will stay. Is Zhao De an enlightened master? He won't be able to do anything." "Your Majesty, why don't we inform Black Tortoise Mountain?" Ningzhe thought for a while. Zheng Xilai was about to shake his head, but stopped himself. He did not want to cause unnecessary trouble and let more people know about the blood dragon tree. However, he immediately realized that since the Holy Church of Light knew about the blood dragon tree and Black Tortoise Mountain was right in front of them, he would be lying to himself if he said he did not know. Before this, he thought that the Zheng Dynasty imperial family kept it a secret very well. Now, it seemed that it was not as secretive as he thought. Black Tortoise Mountain was so well behaved. Even if they knew about it, they would not dare to act recklessly and pretended not to know. If the news was leaked, Black Tortoise Mountain would probably snatch the Blood Dragon branch at all costs. Since he was the only one who knew about the cultivation method of the Blood Dragon tree, it would be useless no matter how powerful Black Tortoise Mountain was. If Black Tortoise Mountain and the Holy Church of Light fought, it would prevent them from joining forces. As the Emperor, his considerations were not limited to the present. If he killed Chu Li through the military formation, Dong Guangyi would probably become the strongest enlightened master. If the Holy Church of Light and Black Tortoise Mountain joined forces, the Zheng dynasty imperial family would have to submit to Black Tortoise Mountain and work for others. However, releasing the news to Black Tortoise Mountain might also offend Sun Mingwei. The Holy Church of Light might fall out and leave the alliance. Even the Li dynasty would leave. However, by then, Chu Li would be dead. Even if the Holy Church of Light fell out with him, they would not join forces with the Black Tortoise Mountain. He was not afraid because the Zheng dynasty wanted to conquer the world and would have to face the Li dynasty sooner or later. Moreover, the Zheng dynasty's power was enough to conquer the Ji dynasty. If the Li dynasty joined forces with him, it would be impossible for them to join forces with the Ji dynasty. There would be no more obstacles in conquering the Ji dynasty. The only worry was the Fu dynasty. Although Chu Li killed 2 emperors in a row and greatly damaged the Fu dynasty's vitality, they did not do anything until now. This was somewhat abnormal. The Fu dynasty could not just watch as the Zheng dynasty grew stronger. He had been carefully probing around and cautiously guarding against the Fu dynasty's attack. Chapter 29:16. The inside of the tent was completely silent. Shouts could be faintly heard from outside, and killing intent soared into the heavens. It was clear that the soldiers in the army were training. They all contained a powerful blood energy and baleful aura, causing the power of this formation to rise to another level. Military formations were at their strongest during battles. Once 2 armies faced each other, the power of military formations was astonishing. Unfortunately, military formations could not be maintained for long. After one attack, they would usually disperse and fight separately or form smaller military formations. When the soldiers were training, the power of military formations was also very strong, stronger than when the soldiers were resting at night. After a while, footsteps were heard. Zheng Shilai strode in, followed by a skinny middle-aged man. It was Ningzhe. Ningzhe entered the tent and bowed, holding a long wooden box under his left arm. Leader's son, Priest Zhao, please take a look. This is the Dragon Blood branch. Zheng Shilai smiled and pointed at the wooden box. Ningzhe came to Sun Mingwei, not daring to look in her clear and charming eyes. He lowered his head and opened the wooden box. There were 2 withered branches in the box. They were strong and thin as if they were cast from iron. They were bright red, as if they were painted with cinnabar, redder than blood. There were no branches or leaves on them, and there were faint flashes of scales on the branches. They seemed to be dragon scales. This is the Dragon Blood branch. Sun Mingwei glanced at him. Your Majesty won't try to fool me with a fake branch because I've never seen the Dragon Blood branch, right? Don't worry, leader. Zheng Shilai quickly waved his hand and smiled. I'm not that kind of person. I hope not. Sun Mingwei did not deny it, and looked at Chu Li. Chu Li nodded and took 2 steps forward to Ningzhe. He reached out and took the wooden box. Ningzhe stared at the withered branches in the wooden box reluctantly and said, They will wither in 3 days. Understood. Chu Li nodded. He activated the life and death scripture. Although there was no spiritual energy around him, his inner energy could be converted into spiritual energy. This was the beauty of the life and death scripture. Spiritual energy and inner energy could be converted into one. After the spiritual energy entered the 2 withered branches, Chu Li's expression changed. He turned to look at Ningzhe, who looked reluctant, and then at Zheng Shilai, who was smiling. What happened? Sun Mingwei asked. Chu Li took the wooden box forward and returned it to Ningzhe. Ningzhe was stunned and subconsciously reached out to take it. Chu Li turned his head and fist saluted. With a straight face, he said, Reporting to Bishop, these 2 branches are already dead. They've withered completely, and there's no sign of life. Sun Mingwei's jade-like face was covered by a white veil, so no one could see the changes in her expression. However, one could see that her phoenix-like eyes were flickering and slowly solidifying. Her spotless snow-white gown fluttered lightly as if she was in a strong gale. Zheng Shilai hurriedly said, "Cult Master Sun." Sun Mingyue's phoenix eyes slowly narrowed as she glanced at Zheng Shilai. "Your Majesty, you've really disappointed me. There must be a mistake." Zheng Shilai hurriedly said, "I've already given the order, and they won't dare to disobey. Even if it's a blood dragon tree, this holy king Zhao, the branches of the blood dragon tree look like this. Not just the branches, but the entire blood dragon tree looks like this. It looks bare and has no leaves, only the trunk. And it doesn't look like a living thing, more like a fake tree forged from iron." Chuli chuckled and said nothing. Sun Mingyue lightly said, "To tell you the truth, Your Majesty, Holy King Zhao is famous for his superb martial arts in the church. In fact, he's not best at martial arts, but the art of planting spirit herbs. He's extremely talented in planting spirit herbs and is very sensitive to spiritual energy. With just a touch, he can feel the vitality of spirit herbs, whether it's strong or weak." "There's such a talent?" Zheng Shilai curiously looked at Chuli. Sun Mingyue said, "If not, I wouldn't have asked for the blood dragon tree branch." "I see." Zheng Shilai smiled. "It seems that Bishop thinks that this holy king Zhao can keep the blood dragon tree branch alive and plant it into a blood dragon tree. How do you know if you don't try?" Sun Mingyue lightly said. "Xiaoning, what's wrong with you?" Zheng Shilai's face immediately darkened, and he coldly said like a block of ice, "How dare you lie to me? Do you think that just because I can't tell if it's dead or alive, you can deceive me? Please forgive me, Your Majesty." Ningzhe hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed hard. He lowered his voice and said, "The blood dragon tree is precious, but Bishop Sun and the others are just wasting their efforts and wasting the blood dragon tree branch. That's why I acted on my own and used 2 dead tree branches. If they don't know whether they're dead or alive, then there's no difference between taking the living and dead tree branches. What if they can tell whether it's alive or dead?" Zheng Shilai coldly laughed. "Then I'll be embarrassed? Please forgive me, Your Majesty. I'm willing to be punished." Ningzhe kowtowed again. "Shut up." Zheng Shilai waved his hand and said snappily, "Others will think that we're playing a trick." Sun Mingyue's bright eyes sized him up with a faint smile. Zheng Shilai knew that Sun Mingyue saw through him and said awkwardly, "This Bishop's son, I really didn't manage my subordinates well. I'm sorry. You didn't encounter such a thing, did you? He's also loyal. You don't have to say much." "Just take it alive," Sun Mingyue lightly said. "You're so broad-minded, Bishop Sunday. I'm ashamed." Zheng Shilai shook his head and sighed. He then shouted, "Hurry up and get up. Go get the live blood dragon branch." "Yes." Ningzhe quickly got up and picked up the wooden box of leaf. Chu Li raised his hand. "Wait." Ningzhe paused and looked at Chu Li doubtfully. Chu Li said, "Since it's a dead branch, it's useless for all of you to keep it. That's why you took it out. Then leave these 2 dead branches as well. Consider it as a supplement. If it's really a live branch next time, we won't be so calculative." "This." Ningzhe looked at Zheng Shilai. Zheng Shilai nodded and smiled. "All right, it's just 2 dead branches. It's fine as long as Priest Zhao doesn't spread it." "Of course." Chuli smiled. "Don't worry, Your Majesty. We have to keep it a secret, too. We don't want outsiders to know." Yes. Zheng Shilai laughed. "This is our common secret. Hurry up and get lost." Ningzhe handed the wooden box to Chuli. He gave a fist salute and turned around to leave. Chuli opened the wooden box and looked at the blood dragon branch. "Priest Zhao, what do you want this dead branch for?" Zheng Shilai smiled. "No matter how precious the blood dragon tree is, this dead branch is worthless. It's not hard and has no other use. It's no different from an ordinary branch." The Zheng dynasty imperial family had a deep understanding of the blood dragon tree. Naturally, they had a deep understanding of the blood dragon tree as well. The wood was brittle and soft. It was completely different from when it was alive. When it was alive, it was harder than steel and could not be hurt by swords. They had also tried various methods, such as grinding it into powder to drink, grinding it into powder to be refined into pills, boiling it into potions, and many other methods. In the end, they concluded that once it withered, it would be useless and ignored it. Chu Li said, "Actually, it's useless, but I want to compare a dead branch with a live one to see if there are any cultivation clues and cultivation methods. Your Majesty won't tell you, right?" "Haha, about that, the ancestors have forbidden me. I can't tell you." Zhang Xilai shook his head and laughed. Chu Li smiled. "Based on my guess, you'll use dragon blood?" Zhang Xilai was stunned. He then laughed. "Priest Zhao is really interesting. The Zheng dynasty isn't Goddess Attraction Mountain. There are no dragons." Chu Li could tell from Zhang Xilai's expression that it was not dragon blood. Chapter 29:17. Your Majesty? Ning Zai's voice interrupted his thoughts. Zhang Xilai pondered and nodded slowly. "All right, pass the news to Black Tortoise Mountain. Be discreet and don't expose any flaws." "Yes." Ning Zai nodded excitedly. "There are spies from Black Tortoise Mountain in the army. I just need to expose some flaws, and they will investigate themselves. By then, they won't be able to track us down." Very good." Zhang Xilai nodded and showed a look of approval. "You've been wrong this time," Ning Zai quickly said. "Your Majesty, why do you say that? I don't deserve it. Go." Zhang Xilai waved his hand in satisfaction. Ning Zai bowed deeply and left. Zhang Xilai returned to the military tent. Sun Mingwe was already sitting cross-legged on the bed. Seeing him enter, she glanced at him and said, "Start spreading the news now. I think Chu Li will be here soon." "You think Chu Li will definitely come?" Zhang Xilai asked. Sun Mingwe nodded. "According to my understanding of him, he will definitely come. If he really wants to kill you, why not just go to Divine Light Basilica? He knows this is a trap. Will he still come?" Zhang Xilai smiled. "If I don't come, he might not go to Divine Light Basilica to kill me." Sun Mingyue said faintly, "He is not a narrow-minded person. He is broad-minded. Even if I betrayed him, he would not kill me immediately. But now that I have helped His Majesty set up this trap, he will want to kill me." "Hee, it seems like Leader Sun still has feelings for Chu Li." Zhang Xilai shook his head. Sun Mingwe said, "It doesn't matter anymore. Now we can only meet in life and death. This is how the world is. As enlightened masters, we can't be free." Chu Li is free." Zhang Xilai scoffed. He thought of Chu Li killing grandmasters and could not help but feel jealous. As enlightened masters, they had to follow the rules, but Chu Li could do whatever he wanted without scruples. It was too unfair. Unfortunately, there was no way to reason this out. The grandmasters would not give you a chance to speak. Sun Mingwe said, "Who could be truly free? With Chu Li's martial arts, isn't it the same? How can that be the same? He chose to be where he is now. He wasn't forced." Zhang Xilai shook his head. "He's different from us. It's the same." Sun Mingwe shook her head and said, "Actually, he didn't want to fight. Why should he take the risk at this point?" But his conscience was uneasy, so he could only brace himself and stand out. Who asked him to be the #1 master in the world? He can't just watch the people of the great Ji dynasty suffer. Even if he's the #1 master in the world, he doesn't have the heart to be the #1 master in the world. He can't treat the people like dogs, and he'll never be able to live in peace. Zhang Xilai laughed out loud and was very proud of himself. As an emperor, he needed to love his people. However, this love was not out of pity, but out of interest. In his eyes, the people were like cattle and sheep. They were just property. He would feel heartache if they were lost, but he would not think for the people. Chu Li's martial arts was high, but he was soft-hearted. He was destined to be a tragedy. His final ending would be unspeakably tragic. Sun Mingwei glanced at him and said nothing. If Chu Li had a cold and hard heart, she would have cut off everything a long time ago. Zhang Shalai was overjoyed and laughed for a while. Then, he slowly stopped smiling. This is the soft-heartedness of a woman. It's really laughable when it comes to the #1 master in the world. Sun Mingyue's eyes suddenly turned cold. She could not bear to hear others speak ill of Chu Li. However, Zhang Shilai thought that she was angry because of those words. He quickly smiled and said, "Bishop, please don't misunderstand. I don't mean to look down on women." Your Majesty, why do you have to say one thing and mean another? Sun Mingwe calmly said, let's talk about the blood dragon tree. Will Priest Zhao be able to return to the Great Light Peak safely? Oh, what do you mean, Bishop? Zheng Shilai was stunned. Sun Mingwe said, you won't deliberately leak the news and have someone kill Priest Zhao, will you? Of course not. Zheng Shilai firmly denied. What kind of person do you think I am? I hope so, Sun Mingwe said. In that case, it's better for you to be careful, Your Majesty. You should leave quickly and not wait for Chu Li. Bishop, I've decided to wait for him with you, Zheng Shilai said in a low voice. Sun Mingwe looked at him in surprise. She could see that Zheng Shilai was guilty and timid. As an emperor, how could he not care about his life? Even if he could ascend to the Outland after his death, it would not be as comfortable there as it was here. No matter how restricted he was still the emperor and supreme. As long as Chu Li enters, Zheng Shilai said, I'll be able to kill Chu Li. Sun Mingwe said thoughtfully, it seems that Your Majesty has another special skill. That's right. Zheng Shilai chuckled. I won't hide it from you, Bishop. I've cultivated a mystical technique. As long as Chu Li enters the formation and cuts off his connection with spiritual energy, I can use this mystical technique to kill Chu Li. His swordsmanship is the best, Sun Mingwe said. Zheng Shilai smiled and pulled his yellow robe, revealing the faintly glowing clothing underneath. He said proudly, no matter how good his swordsmanship is or how sharp his sky regicide is, he won't be able to break my treasured clothing. This is a treasured clothing obtained from the Outland. Sun Mingwe asked, what about your neck? Zheng Shilai extended his arm to block and smiled. If I can't protect my neck, then I have nothing to say. To be honest, Bishop, my special skill can gather the power of the military formation. When Chu Li's martial arts is weakened, my martial arts will skyrocket. Oomph. He showed a proud expression. Sun Mingwe nodded lightly and was calm. She was inexplicably worried. Zheng Shilai was so well prepared. If Chu Li really broke in, the outcome would be unpredictable. If it came down to it, the two of them could only work together to defeat Zheng Shilai. However, Zheng Shilai would not be the only one in the tent. She could not sense an ambush now, but she believed that there must be one. It was just that it was hidden very well. When Chu Li walked into a forest, he suddenly disappeared without a trace. He saw the thoughts in Ning Zhe's mind and knew that he wanted to harm him. He decided to play with this group of people and make Zhao Dai's name known. Zhao Dai had not appeared for a while, and the people in the martial arts world had forgotten his name. It was time to make his name known again. It would be more beneficial in the future. However, compared to this, the dragon's blood tree was more important. He did not dare to delay and immediately returned to the island of the High Duke's public house. The place with the densest spiritual energy was his small courtyard. The existence of the Gloriesville courtyard made the island's spiritual energy dense. The small courtyard was the place with the densest spiritual energy. Unfortunately, the characteristics of the dragon's blood tree determined that it could not be placed next to the Gloriesville tree. Otherwise, the dragon's blood tree might devour the Gloriesville tree and it would not be worth it. With the dragon's blood tree, the soaring grass, the dragon's blood fruit, and the soaring pill, in addition to the surpassing state, it would not be difficult to create a grandmaster. It was time to cultivate his own forces. He could not do things by himself all day long. He would spend all his time fighting with his opponents and would not have the energy to pay attention to more important things. The dragon's blood tree was the key. He could not wait to grow it and then mature it into a dragon's blood fruit. Xueling's white clothes fluttered as she approached. She saw Chu Li holding 2 wooden boxes and reached out to take them. Chapter 29:18. Just as he had expected, even when he was outside the military formation and had the help of the life and death scripture, the overwhelming influx of spiritual energy only made the dragon blood branch more vigorous. It could not stop its vitality from flowing away. It was still losing its vitality quickly. More importantly, not only did the abundant spiritual energy not increase its vitality, it was also speeding up its loss of vitality. It was as if the vigorous spiritual energy was burning its life. Chu Li frowned, deep in thought. He quickly cut off the spiritual energy and sealed all of it at the same time to prevent it from devouring it. As a result, the speed at which its vitality flowed was greatly reduced. This made Chu Li speechless. This blood dragon tree was different from other spirit herbs. It was very strange. It was no wonder Zhang Xilai dared to release it. He was sure that no one could keep it alive. Chu Li recalled what he had said to Zhang Xilai earlier. Fresh blood. It was not dragon blood, but human blood. However, was it the blood of a man or a woman? Was it the blood of an ultimate yin body or an ultimate yang body? Or was it the blood of a virgin boy or a virgin girl? Unfortunately, he could not ask for the answer. He could only deduce it himself. In a flash of inspiration, he bit his index finger and let the blood flow onto a withered branch. When the blood fell on the withered branch, faintly discernible scales suddenly appeared. They were no different from real dragon scales, but they were far smaller. However, they looked like dragon scales. It was indeed worthy of being called a blood dragon tree. It seemed that this tree was somewhat related to dragons. As soon as the scales appeared, they immediately disappeared. At the same time, there was blood. Chu Li's senses were extremely sharp. He was even more sensitive to his own blood. Even though he had entered the branch, he could still feel it. When he reached out and touched the branch, he could feel it even more clearly. He seemed to see passages in the blood dragon tree branch that extended in all directions. In this way, it was very easy to absorb spiritual energy and disperse it faster. It was indeed different from ordinary spirit herbs. After the blood entered it, it was quickly digested as if it had completely fused with the branch and spread everywhere. Its vitality steadily increased. However, Chu Li's expression did not improve. He realized that after its vitality increased, it was still flowing away and the speed did not slow down. It seemed that the divine god's blood could increase its vitality but could not become its source. It would still die. Even if it relied on its own blood to prolong its life, it wouldn't last long. This drop of blood could maintain its lifespan for a day. The key was that without a source of vitality, it could not bloom and bear fruit. Shui Ling, drip a drop of blood on it, Chu Li said. Shui Ling, who had been watching from the side, was already very curious. Seeing Chu Li bite his finger and drip blood, she became even more curious. Hearing what Shui Ling said, she bit her index finger and dripped the blood onto the branch without hesitation. Her white and tender finger reflected the blood, making it look exceptionally red. The blood was like a pearl, but it slid down the branch and was not absorbed by it. Chu Li furrowed his brows. It seemed like his speculation was correct. The only thing it wanted to absorb was the enlightened master's blood. He would probably disdain the fresh blood of anyone other than a heavenly god. Chu Li shook his head helplessly. She was really picky. Young master, what happened? Shui Ling pointed at the blood that had dripped onto the ground and disappeared into the soil. Do you want another drop? Let's try again, Chu Li said. Shui Ling squeezed her slender and white index finger and squeezed out another drop of blood. She leaned forward, and her index finger was almost touching the branch. The drop of blood steadily fell onto the branch and then slid down the branch into the soil and disappeared. This! Shui Ling stood up and turned to look at Chu Li. Young master, what's going on? It might be a little picky about blood, Chu Li said. Is my blood not clean? Shui Ling was a little depressed. Chu Li smiled. It only wants the enlightened master's blood. So that's how it is. Shui Ling let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Young master, it's too picky. It wants the enlightened master's blood. Chu Li said, the enlightened master's blood is useless. I'll think of another way. As he said this, he put the two branches back into the wooden box and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in Juyao Valley. If it was any other spirit herb, he would definitely not bring it to Juyao Valley, but not the blood dragon tree. Zhao Day's identity also needed him to return as soon as possible. Therefore, he did not have much time to study it. He needed to kill in one strike and find the root of the problem as soon as possible. Asking the purple dragon and the Xianyuan tortoise was the shortcut. After a while, the purple dragon and the Xianyuan tortoise rushed over. When they saw the blood dragon tree, the two spirit beasts were confused. It was obvious that they had never seen it before. Chu Li shook his head helplessly. Then, he discussed with the purple dragon to pour some dragon blood on it to try. Dragon blood had a strong, corrosive ability. It was no different from poison. Fortunately, there were two of them. The name of the blood dragon tree and the strange appearance of the blood dragon tree made him conclude that it was related to dragon blood. He wanted to try it. The purple dragon agreed readily. Soon, it scratched its mouth with its claws. Blood began to flow from its mouth, and a few drops dripped onto the blood dragon tree branch. Sizzle. Soon, the blood dragon tree branch began to emit white gas. Chu Li hurriedly used his spiritual energy to protect it, but it was too late. As soon as the dragon blood entered the branch, white gas evaporated. Then, the scales of the branch appeared and merged with the dragon blood. Chu Li watched as it melted in the dragon blood. In the blink of an eye, only a wisp of white gas was left. The blood dragon tree branch had disappeared. Chu Li shook his head helplessly and stomped his feet. The purple dragon squinted its eyes and looked at Chu Li with embarrassment. Chu Li patted its claws to indicate that it was fine. However, he was at his wit's end. The omniscient mirror and heavenly star insight skill in his mind kept spinning, looking for a chance. After a while, he suddenly disappeared in a flash of light and reappeared at the ice pool in the 100,000 Hills. The little vermilion bird stood on a boulder beside the ice pool. It was taking a nap with its eyes closed. It seemed to be cultivating. When it sensed Chu Li's appearance, it opened its eyes and then closed them again. Chu Li asked, "Little vermilion bird, do you know about the blood dragon tree?" After his omniscient mirror and heavenly star insight skill were activated, the little vermilion bird's figure suddenly flashed across the omniscient mirror. He hurried over. The blood dragon tree? The little vermilion bird opened its small eyes again. The purple dragon and the dark origin tortoise appeared right after. They immediately leaped into the ice pool and began to play. Suddenly, the calm ice pool became turbulent. Soon, the waves hit the shore and were about to splash on Chu Li and the little vermilion bird. Chu Li nodded. "I obtained a branch of the blood dragon tree, but I can't keep it alive. I'm sure you know that." "Oomph." The little vermilion bird turned its head away. Chu Li was overjoyed. It was obvious that the vermilion bird knew about the blood dragon tree. "If you can tell me how to cultivate the blood dragon tree, I can help you become a vermilion bird," the little vermilion bird said. The little vermilion bird's voice rang in Chu Li's ears. "You're bluffing." Chu Li smiled. "Aren't the purple dragon and the dark origin tortoise only one step away?" "Oomph, they're still far from supreme grade." The little vermilion bird scoffed. "You can't help them become supreme grade." Chu Li said, "My master can help his dragon become a golden dragon. I can help too." "All right, there's no harm in telling you," the little vermilion bird said. "But you must help me cultivate every time you come here." "Of course." Chu Li nodded. "I'll come here once every 10 days. "All right." The little vermilion bird agreed happily. Chapter 29:19. Other than our clan, I don't know about the blood dragon tree. The little vermilion bird's proud voice rang in Chu Li's mind. Chu Li nodded and looked like he was all ears. The little vermilion bird continued. "To make the blood dragon tree grow, you need the blood of 4 types of spirit beasts, namely the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise. You should know this since that's the heart technique you cultivate. It's called the 4 spirits of heaven and earth." Chu Li asked, "The blood of the 4 spirit beasts? Combine the blood of the 4 types of spirit beasts into one and pour it on the tree. It'll naturally grow." The little vermilion bird scoffed. "Simple, right?" Chu Li smiled bitterly. "The blood of the 4 spirits requires a supreme spirit beast? The blood dragon tree doesn't need a supreme spirit beast. Great one will do." The little vermilion bird said, "I can help you get the vermilion bird's blood. You can do the rest yourself." The blood of the white tiger. Chu Li shook his head. The little vermilion bird said, "Are you stupid? Just let your two fellows do it." "That's true." Chu Li smiled. As he spoke, he looked at the two spirit beasts who were having fun in the ice pond. The little vermilion bird glanced at them and scoffed arrogantly. Chu Li said, "Then let's start now. I'll leave the vermilion bird's blood in your hands. Don't forget what you said." The little vermilion bird's crisp voice rang in his mind. Then it turned into a shadow and shot into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Chu Li called out the two spirit beasts and asked them for help. The two spirit beasts agreed readily and quickly disappeared into the sky. Chu Li felt uneasy as he watched them leave. The tiger was known as the king of beasts. Although that was only for wild beasts and was far from being the king in the 100,000 hills, it should not be underestimated. It was far more powerful than ordinary spirit beasts. He did not know if the two spirit beasts could obtain the spirit tiger's blood. If he hurt them because of this, he would feel guilty. About an hour later, the purple dragon and the mystic origin tortoise appeared. The purple dragon was holding a huge spirit tiger in its mouth. In front of the purple dragon, the spirit tiger was like an obedient cat, its body weak and powerless. The soul power of the purple dragon and the mystic origin turtle were both extremely powerful. It was only because their connection with Chu Li was different that he was able to see into their minds. Through the images in the minds of the purple dragon and the mystic origin tortoise, Chu Li knew that the two spirit beasts were now working very well together. One was in charge of baiting, while the other was in charge of launching sneak attacks. The mystic origin tortoise would attack first, but its shield was too sturdy, so its opponent could not do anything to it, even if it was exhausted. At this time, the purple dragon would appear and launch a sneak attack. When this huge spirit tiger saw the Xianyuan tortoise, it was bored and wanted to play with the Xianyuan tortoise to pass the time. In the end, it was caught and brought here. Spirit, Choo-choo dragon. The little vermilion bird transformed into a shadow and shot over with a blood-red feather in its beak. When it came close to Chu Li, it released its beak and the bright red feather fluttered down. Chu Li, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. He did not dare to reach out and take it. He had suffered from the vermilion bird's feathers before. Li vermilion 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 li leet. Li vermilion vermilion chun vermilion dragon. Vermilion li li vermilion vermilion li. Vermilion verli vermilion vermilion beast vermilion dragon beast. Beasts. Chu Li smiled and took the bright red feather. Immediately, a scorching hot aura entered his body, almost cooking him. Chu Li thought the vermilion beast in his mind would absorb it. That was why he dared to take the feather. However, he did not expect the little beast to ignore him. Left with no choice, Chu Li could only activate the vermilion bird power. After the scorching energy circulated through his body, it turned into a warm energy and returned to his dantian. It was quite beneficial for him. Only then did he have the time to look at the feather. It shone brightly under the sun. It looked like a rainbow. Little vermilion bird looked at the spirit tiger. "You have to be careful. It has parents." Chu Li's expression changed slightly as he glanced at the limp spirit tiger with its eyes closed. He quickly asked the purple dragon to put it down before he went forward to pull out the regal sky sword and forcefully slash the spirit tiger's calf. With great difficulty, he managed to make a small cut and a few drops of blood flowed out. The drops of blood floated in the air like red beads. Chu Li used the void as a bottle to hold them. He had the purple dragon and the black origin tortoise release some blood. Their blood beads floated up too. Then he had them put the spirit tiger back to its original position and sneak back after waking it up. Even if its parents were not supreme rank spirit beasts, they were at least rank 1. It would be troublesome to provoke them. Once the purple dragon and the black origin tortoise left with the spirit tiger, Chu Li used the sky killer sword to cut the vermilion bird's feather. A few drops of blood flowed out of the tube. Little vermilion bird scoffed. "How you fuse them is your problem. It's useless if you can't." Chu Li nodded. He disappeared from the 100,000 hills. The blood beads disappeared too. Xueling was patrolling the island. She was inspecting the island herself. She did not allow anyone to enter the island to prevent secrets from being leaked. There were more and more secrets on the island. She bowed when she saw Chu Li. Chu Li said, "I'm going to plant the blood dragon tree. No one can disturb me." "Yes." Xueling nodded. Chu Li found a secluded spot and stuck 2 withered branches into the soil. Then, he began to fuse the blood of the 4 spirit beasts. To others, fusing the blood of the 4 spirit beasts was extremely difficult. However, it was a piece of cake for him. He had fused the heart techniques of the 4 spirit beasts into one. As long as he infused the inner energy of the 4 spirit beasts' heart techniques into his spirit blood, they could be easily fused under the guidance of his inner energy. After the blood of the 4 spirit beasts fused, it turned into pure white milk. It was rather strange. Chu Li divided the blood of the 4 spirit beasts into 10 parts. Then, he tried to drip a drop of blood onto a branch of the blood dragon tree. The branch of the blood dragon tree expanded without a sound. It seemed to have become thicker. Then it slowly flattened. The drop of blood had disappeared. He stuck the other 2 withered branches into the soil. He poured a drop of the blood of the 4 spirit beasts on them, and they were quickly absorbed. No matter how strange the blood dragon tree was, the life and death scripture could still work. As long as he used the blood of the 4 spirit beasts and had the source of vitality, he could use the life and death scripture to reverse life and death. Unfortunately, he could not do anything about the branch from before. It had been destroyed by the purple dragon's blood. He poured the remaining 7 drops of blood into the rest of the blood dragon tree branches. 3 drops for each withered branch and 1 drop for the living branch. The surging spiritual energy covered the sky and the earth. The blood dragon tree branches began to grow rapidly. This was the complete opposite of the situation before he had the source of vitality. Not only did the surging spiritual energy not consume the tree's vitality, but it also strengthened it. This was the difference between having a source of vitality and not having one. He decided to delve deeper into the mystery. The boundless world was full of strange things. Each had its own wonders. Under the circulation of the life and death scripture, the branch quickly grew taller and thicker. After half a day, it grew into a small tree. Then, the small tree bloomed and slowly bore fruit. The fruit was only the size of a pinky. After it appeared, the growth of the entire blood dragon tree slowed down greatly. Chu Li's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly felt dozens of murderous intents directed at him. Thus, he reminded Xueling to not let anyone near this place. Then, he unsheathed the sky regal sword and replaced it with a modesty sword. Then, he suddenly disappeared and reappeared in a forest between the Zheng dynasty's military camp and the Great Light Peak. This forest was 100 miles away from the place where the murderous intents were emitted. To a master, it would only take a short while. Chu Li had already transformed into Zhao De. Chapter 29:20. He actually saw Dong Guangyi. He really hadn't expected this. After Dong Guangyi fled in a sorry state the last time, logically speaking, Dong Guangyi should be cultivating bitterly in seclusion, knowing his shame, and striving to become stronger. What was even more unexpected was that Zhao De was only a grandmaster. Even though he was a top-notch priest in the Holy Church of Light, Dong Guangyi did not need to make a move against him. Dong Guangyi was an enlightened master, so he could not simply attack a grandmaster. He shook his head in confusion. However, he saw Dong Guangyi raise his head and look in his direction. Then, with a point of his finger, 20 grandmasters beside him immediately moved out and dashed towards them. After activating the life and death scripture, Chu Li suppressed his cultivation level. However, even if a large part of his cultivation level was sealed, he still remained at the peak of the grandmaster. He was just a step away from the enlightened master and almost reached the level before he became an enlightened master. He was already invincible in the grandmaster and even had the ability to threaten the enlightened masters. He did not bring the heaven killing sword with him, so he could not unleash the power of the heaven killing sword technique. The modesty sword could not withstand the heaven-killing technique, or else it could kill an enlightened master. A moment later, Dong Guangyi hid in the void. 20 grandmasters had already appeared and surrounded Chu Li. It was obvious that they had come with ill intentions. Chu Li frowned and said, "I'm Zhao De from the Holy Church of Light." "Who are you?" "The Black Tortoise Mountain," an elder said. Chu Li scoffed and said, "We've never had any grudges with the Black Tortoise Mountain. What are you doing?" "Hand over the Blood Dragon branch." The robust old man spoke in a deep voice. Chu Li said, "Only the Zheng dynasty's emperor and our bishop know about the Blood Dragon branch." "How did you know?" The elder frowned and stared at him, trying to figure out the truth. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. "It seems that Zheng Shilai played us and wanted to reap the benefits. Don't you think it's strange that he could get such top-secret information? The spies in the military don't have such great abilities." He had already seen through the elder's thoughts. For what the old man saw, this report was sent by someone from the Black Tortoise Mountain's army. After the Black Tortoise Mountain's Black Tortoise Hall's elders studied it, they sent people to intercept the Blood Dragon's branch. Regardless of whether it was true or not, they still had to make this trip. As for the Holy Church of Light, they no longer cared about them. Back then, Sun Mingyue and Chu Li had joined forces to force the Holy Church of Light to capture one of their disciples, General Zhong Wancheng of the Qiu dynasty. Zhong Wancheng was very important to them, as he was the key figure for the Zheng dynasty to annex the Qiu dynasty in the future. Therefore, Black Tortoise Mountain hated Sun Mingyue to the core. Dong Guangyi didn't pay too much attention to these things, so he didn't show any hostility towards Sun Mingyue. However, since the Black Tortoise Hall elder had made such a decision, as one of the Black Tortoise Hall elders, he naturally had to comply. He would protect her in secret to ensure that nothing would go wrong. The old man frowned and pondered. He had already believed Chu Li's words, but there was nothing he could do even if he did. He knew that it was a trap, but he still had to step into it. As long as Chu Li had the Blood Dragon branch, they were also eager to get their hands on it so that they could create more martial arts masters. Now that they had the vitality-devouring tortoise, they already had enough martial arts masters. Chu Li said, "Zheng Shilai really has a good plan. Are we going to fall for it obediently? Where's the Blood Dragon branch?" The old man said slowly, "As long as you hand over the Blood Dragon branch, we'll let you go." Chu Li shook his head and said, "I don't have the Blood Dragon branch." Looks like you won't give up until you see your coffin." The old man's face darkened. Chu Li said, "You guys are so gullible. Zheng Shilai said that I have the Blood Dragon branch, so I have it?" "You definitely have it." The old man nodded slowly. "Otherwise, Zheng Shilai wouldn't have used us. Zhao De, if you don't hand it over, we'll have no choice but to offend you. We'll naturally be able to find it after we cripple you." Chu Li chuckled. "With just you guys?" Although he was prepared to use them to make a name for himself, he still gave them a chance. This was also where his bottom line was. As long as they did not seek death, he would not kill them. Most of the time, their efforts would be in vain. The old man waved his hand. Do it, kill him. He was prepared to cripple Chu Li, but when he attacked, he would often cause trouble for himself. Being kind to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. Even if he killed him with Dong Guangyi's spirit pill, as long as he was still breathing, he could be saved. 20 grandmasters pounced on Chu Li, almost all of them using their fists. The power of the Black Tortoise's divine fist was astonishing, and it was even more overbearing in their hands. When they joined forces, the fist force of several people could converge together, so they were very confident that as long as Chu Li was not an enlightened master, he would not be able to withstand their joint attack. Chu Li scoffed and looked up at the sky. A bright light descended from the sky and fell on his body. Suddenly, his whole body was shrouded in bright light, as if there was a flame burning in his body, and the flame swayed with the wind. Bang! Chu Li flashed like a ghost and escaped from the encirclement of the 20 people. With a punch of the divine light fist, a bright light from the flame shot out along with the fist force, and a punch sent a middle-aged man flying. The middle-aged man was in the air, clenching his fists and crossing his wrists. A vague shadow of a turtle shell appeared around his body. It was obviously the black tortoise power. Chu Li had cultivated the black tortoise power before, so he was very clear about its defensive power. This middle-aged man would not be able to withstand the Divine Light Fist. Chu Li's punch looked like the Divine Light Fist, but the inner energy that was used to activate the fist technique was the Supreme Diamond Scripture. Although his cultivation level was suppressed, the purity of the Supreme Diamond Scripture was still incomparable to his Great Light Scripture. Bang! A dull sound came from inside the middle-aged man's body, and then he fell to the ground softly. He spat out blood from the corner of his mouth, like a pile of mud on the ground. He was powerless and could not get up. Chu Li's punch broke through his defense, and once his defense was broken, it was equivalent to breaking the black tortoise power. The black tortoise power could not be used temporarily, and his body was powerless. The rest of the people's expressions changed slightly. They were surprised by his ghostly body movement technique and also by the power of his Divine Light Fist. According to their estimates, the Divine Light Fist would not be able to break through their black tortoise power. Bang, 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 bang. Chu Li's body was like a ghost, suddenly in front and suddenly behind. It was impossible to defend. One after another, the Divine Light Fist was thrown out, and the Grandmaster from the Black Tortoise Mountain were sent flying. It seemed that the 20 of them working together was useless. In front of Chu Li, they were like children without any resistance. Out of the 20 Grandmasters, only 3 were left in the blink of an eye. The remaining 17 were lying on the ground, limp and unable to get up. They could only stare at him, watching his every move, their eyes filled with hope. Chu Li suddenly stopped and looked at the 3 Grandmasters in front of him, a middle-aged man and 2 young men. The 3 of them looked calm, and there was no sign of fear. When they saw that Chu Li had stopped, not only did they not escape, but they also took the initiative to attack Chu Li. Chu Li fluttered backward and said in a low voice, "It's better if the 3 of you know what's good for you. I'll spare your lives." "Oomph." One of the young men sneered. "Zhao, who asked you to spare me? If you have the guts, try and touch me. You have some skills, but too bad you're too ugly. Sun Mingyue will never like you." Another young man sneered. Chu Li's face darkened, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Chapter 29-21. "Shut up," Chu Li shouted and said coldly. "The bishop is not someone you can joke around with." It seems like you really like the bishop." The young man smiled. Chu Li replied, "Who doesn't like the bishop? So you like him?" The young man continued to pursue him. Chu Li replied, "That's right, I like the bishop, respect him, and see him as a god, but it's not as dirty as you think. I have no intention of occupying him. The bishop is like heaven. How can I have any thoughts of blasphemy?" You're not a man." The young man laughed. "No matter how powerful your bishop is, she's still a woman. Since she's a woman, she must have a man. I heard that she likes Chu Li, right?" Chu Li's face darkened. "Shut up. Falling flowers are affectionate, but the flowing water is unrequited. This is indeed a sad thing." The young man laughed and said, "But it's no wonder. Who told you to be ugly?" Chu Li's expression darkened. "You're trying so hard to provoke me, forcing me to kill you so that Dong Guangyi will have an excuse to attack. Am I right? Are you brother Dong Guangyi? How did you know?" The young man cried out. Chu Li laughed coldly. "Interesting. Isn't Dong Guangyi afraid of heavenly punishment for exploiting the loophole of the heavenly rule? What nonsense are you spouting?" The other elder shouted. "What heavenly rule?" Chu Li tilted his head and smiled. "Looks like you're Dong Guangyi's senior, master. Zhao Dai, you've brought disaster to the Holy Church of Light." The elder said, "Your bishop is no match for Guangyi." Chu Li laughed disapprovingly. "Dong Guangyi can defeat the bishop? What a joke." The elder said, "Although you admire your bishop, you can't say something so stupid, right? Dong Guangyi is on par with Chu Li. How can he not defeat Sun Mingyue?" Chu Li replied, "The bishop's martial arts are rare. It's just that he doesn't show it to the world." "Dong Guangyi?" He's just a funny guy with good luck, not worth mentioning. Shut up, the old man shouted coldly. Chu Li said, Dong Guangyi is an enlightened master, but he wanted to attack a grandmaster. Moreover, he even used such a despicable move. I really look down on him. How could someone like him compare to our bishop? What a joke. How dare you? The elder charged at Chu Li. Like a ghost, Chu Li floated behind him and punched him in the back. He sensed that Sun Mingyue had finally gotten rid of Zhang Xilai's entanglement and rushed over. Stop! It was as if a muffled thunder had exploded in his ears. Chu Li's movements paused for a moment before he flew up. Uft! Chu Li spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Dong Guangyi suddenly appeared in the air and looked down at Chu Li. His eyes were as cold as lightning as he said, What a priest from the Holy Church of Light. You have both wisdom and courage. How rare! How rare! Thank you for the compliment. Sun Mingyue's cold voice echoed in the air. She slowly emerged from the sky and caught Chu Li in midair. She placed one hand on his shoulder and lifted him up into the air. Dong Guangyi said in a low voice, Bishop's son, this person hurt my master. I can only kill him. Sun Mingyue said, Impossible. Looks like Bishop's son wants to go against me. Dong Guangyi said coldly. Sun Mingyue's eyes flickered behind her white veil. She said, The Black Tortoise Mountain treats the Holy Church of Light like nothing. Dong Guangyi, let's not talk nonsense. Let's fight and see if the second most powerful person in the world is real. Very well. I'm about to experience Bishop Sun's antique study. Dong Guangyi gritted his teeth and scoffed. As soon as he said that, he pounced forward and unleashed a black tortoise's divine fist. Sun Mingyue felt a gush of energy coming from Chu Li's back. It merged with the supreme titanium scripture in her body. Her cultivation level suddenly increased by several folds. She threw a light punch. It was the divine light fist that was activated by the supreme titanium scripture. A white light flashed. The divine light fist had already collided with the black tortoise's divine fist. Bang! Amidst the earth-shattering sound, Dong Guangyi suddenly retreated, his face filled with shock. The grandmasters on the ground around them flew up one after another. They were weightless, as if they were plants that were being swept away. They flew 10 meters away and landed on the ground like leaves. Sun Mingyue felt a sense of satisfaction. It had been a long time since they worked together like this. After the two inner energies merged, they gave off a strange sense of power. It was as if she was the only one in the world. No one could surpass her. One punch could split mountains and rivers, and it could destroy the stars and the moon. Driven by this feeling, she threw one punch after another at Chu Li. The endless fist shadows were like comets streaking across the sky, falling toward Dong Guangyi. Dong Guangyi faced them with a straight face. Although the black tortoise's divine fist was no match, the shadow of a black tortoise floated on his body. He was channeling the black tortoise shield power. Although he did not have the black tortoise shield power was still a strong defensive heart technique. However, as Sun Mingyue's fist force became stronger and purer, Dong Guangyi felt like he could not withstand it. There is a huge difference between having the black tortoise shield and not, but he was not at a disadvantage so quickly. He frowned. He was confused and angry. He did not expect that Sun Mingyue's cultivation level was lower than his, but her fist force was extraordinarily pure and overbearing. He could not withstand it and was forcibly restrained. He had never been so frustrated when he fought with Chu Li. He could only passively take a beating without being able to fight back. The fist forces that were as fast as light had no choice but to take them head-on. Every time he took one head-on, he would not be able to dodge it in time and could only take it head-on. If this vicious cycle continued, he would only be defeated in the end. He let out an angry roar, and his body suddenly swelled up. The shadow of the black tortoise became solid and suddenly burrowed into his body. He did not dodge the incoming divine light fist force. After taking the blow head-on, he threw a punch at Sun Mingyue. Bang! The divine light fist hit him and sent him flying. It was Chu Li and Sun Mingwei who suddenly accelerated the circulation of the supreme titanium scripture, doubling its power. Dong Guangyi was so angry that he shouted in the air. The corner of his mouth was stained with blood. It was the first time he was so frustrated. He was forcefully suppressed and could not turn the tables, especially by a woman. Sun Mingyue's face, under the white veil, was smiling. The feeling of working together with Chu Li to plot against someone was too wonderful. It was intoxicating. Chu Li used the life and death scripture to suppress his external appearance. He looked like a grandmaster, but his internal appearance was gradually returning to the enlightened master's boundary. The supreme titanium scripture's depth and purity were not inferior to an enlightened master's. Dong Guangyi was completely suppressed by Chu Li and Sun Mingwei. Chu Li shouted, "Dong Guangyi, aren't you the second best in the world? This is the strength of the second best in the world." What a joke. Dong Guangyi's face darkened. He glared at Chu Li. Sun Mingwei scoffed. "If you leave now, I can spare your life. If you don't blame me for being ruthless." Good, good. Dong Guangyi took a deep breath and said slowly, "You forced me to use my ultimate move. You're more powerful than Chu Li, leader's son." Chu Li's eyes lit up. He did not kill Dong Guangyi back then because he wanted to take all of his skills and treasures. Dong Guangyi was like a treasure. It would be a pity to kill him. Today, you will be forced to use another skill. Make your move. Sun Mingwei glanced at Chu Li and said. Dong Guangyi flashed and appeared in front of Sun Mingwei. He threw a punch and wanted to meet Sun Mingyue's fist. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.